10 o'clock. Good timing. We'll kick off with the, I'll just allow Sprague to get to his seat. And then Mā te whakarongo, mā te kōrero, mā te nako, mā te wairua, mā te manaki, mā te mahi atu, pua, te maranga, tihei, mōreo. Through listening, through talking, from the heart, from the spirit, through giving and receiving respect, understanding will bloom. This is the essence of life. Welcome along to our council meeting on the 1st of May. Another month gone. Welcome to our members of the public in the gallery there as well. Just the usual housekeeping, bits and bobs. Toilets are just outside the chamber there on your right. Evacuation, if we need to evacuate for any reason, please go down the stairs, not the elevator, and the assembly point is down on Space Street in the car park. And an earthquake drop, cover and hold. Let's make sure our phones are on silent mode, please. And also a reminder that these proceedings are being recorded for the purpose of live video, both live streaming and downloading. So by remaining in this meeting, you are consenting to being filmed for viewing by the public. I've got an apology from Councillor Chamberlain, and we've got Councillor Wilson online. Are there any further apologies? Being none, would someone like to move with those? Thank you, Councillor Graney and Councillor Barker-Wright. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Carried. Are there any further legal absences, Councillor Graney?
Yes, 19th of May through to the 27th of June, please.
Thank you. Any further? Someone like to move with that accepted? Thank you, Councillor Barker-Wright. Councillor Keast. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Right, so up to the conflict of interest. Are there any items on the agenda that any conflict of interest in? Noting we've also got reports with grant funding. Councillor Butterfield.
I'd like to declare a conflict of interest. I'm the niece of the artist from Tiana Down Station. I would like to remain in the public participation today, and I do so impartially and with an open mind and wish to participate.
Thank you. Councillor Keast.
Conflict of interest, I think it is, with SDC, the Citizens Advisory.
No further conflict. Someone like to move that those be accepted?
You don't need to.
I don't need to. Thank you. I don't believe we've got an extraordinary urgent item today. So it takes us to the confirmation of council minutes from our meetings on the 10th and the 17th on page 7 and 26 respectively. Someone in a position to move that those are okay. Councillor Fraser, Councillor O'Brien. There's no further discussion on those. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Okay, so the first item on our agenda today is public participation, where I've allowed Mr Chapman and Mr Charteris. Normally it's a 5-minute thing, but I've given them the full 30 minutes of public participation in our standing orders. And yet councils will be aware of the standing orders in relation to that. So I'll welcome our to the table. You can come and sit at the end then. Thank you. I believe the letter has been circulated to all the councils. Has everyone read a copy of this? Welcome along, thank you for coming. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Elected members, my name is James Winchester. I'm a barrister based in Hawke's Bay. Senior counsel in the Charters enforcement proceedings. With me are Mr Charters and his partner Rauka Munster, and to my right is Mr Chapman of Crookshank Pride, who you'll probably be aware of. First of all, I'm going to hand over to Mr Charters to speak to the independent review, the outcome of the independent review. No doubt you will have received the letter and commentary on behalf of Mr Charters in response to the independent review. So that is the purpose of the presentation today. I will then make a few observations from my perspective and then hand over to Mr. Chapman, and see if we've got any time left. But, thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent 5 generations of farmers farming in northern Southland, 4 of them at Te Anau Down Station. We're here today to set the record straight and asking the Council to conduct an independent review of the SDC versus Charters enforcement proceedings. We hope that it would prompt an honest investigation and introspection into the failings of Council staff, their approach and the internal process that led to the costly enforcement proceedings, which were a complete waste of time and ratepayers' money. We hoped it would ensure that the same mistakes are not repeated. In particular, we hoped that this would avoid other farming families, individuals and small businesses from being subjected to the same unreasonable, unprofessional and overzealous actions from the Council. It is an understatement to say that we are extremely disappointed with the review. It cannot be called independent, given that the reviewers were only presented with one perspective, that of select Council staff and the Council's lawyers from Anderson Lloyd. Neither ex-Chapman nor myself were contacted by the reviewers to get our side of the story. As a result of the report, it's seriously one-sided and contains numerous untruths and critical omissions of fact. As such, the review has been a further waste of ratepayers' money, as it is nothing short of a whitewashing exercise designed to sweep the dirt under the carpet. There was so much wrong with the Council's conduct that we could spend hours talking about it. But it is all on record, and so we'll be just highlighting a few examples of the true failings of the Council's conduct. It is astounding that the review found that no single individual can be held to be most responsible, and that there was nothing to suggest staff had an overzealous or idealistic approach. From our perspective, the Council staff that were present at both mediations should have been held directly responsible along with Council's legal representatives. Despite all the evidence which has been presented to the court, it is astounding that the reviewers and the Council continue to question the court's findings and seem unwilling to accept that my farm development practices have been vindicated by the court ruling. To be clear, the court found that I had not breached the biodiversity rules. Furthermore, the court accepted that I have existing use rights. The court was also very critical of the evidence presented by the Council's planner and ecologist. I have always maintained I have existing use right to clear regrowth Indigenous vegetation. When the Council exercised the search warrant in September 2018, Marcus Roy and myself agreed that we would both seek and exchange legal opinions on existing use rights. I upheld this agreement via a letter from Rex Chapman to the Council's lawyer. However, Marcus Roy reneged on this agreement and refused to share the legal opinion provided to him by Anderson Lloyd. Where difference of legal interpretation could have been resolved early, it was the Council staff that took an unjustified, unprofessional and adversarial approach. A key failing of the Council's case was the overzealous and unreasonable interpretation and application of biodiversity rules by the Council's planner. This whole debacle could have been avoided had your planner applied a reasonable and rational approach to the drafting of the current biodiversity rules, which we expended significant time and effort trying to appeal unsuccessfully. However, in his interpretation of biodiversity rules, Marcus Roy expected me to replant bracken fern in pasture areas to replace bracken fern I had cleared elsewhere. He told me that I had a selfish attitude because I was unwilling to lock up thousands of hectares of Te Anau Downs for conservation purposes without any form of compensation. And his definition for an area being cleared of vegetation meant I would have had to have sieved all the seeds from the soil. This last definition was so extreme that even your lawyers at Anderson Lloyd had to backpedal on this and ended up abandoning Marcus Roy's evidence. While exercising the council's search warrant in September 2018, the council's ecologist, Mr Davis, unlawfully cut down a small number of older Indigenous shrubs and trees from within stands of vegetation that I had deliberately not cleared in order to age the vegetation. This sampling is not permitted under the plan rules and required a resource consent. However, his tree ring analysis was used to support the council's assertion that I was unlawfully clearing vegetation that fell outside the age limit imposed by the plan, doggedly ignoring my efforts to explain that what the council's ecologists cut down was not representative of the age of vegetation that I had cleared. In May 2020, the council received a public complaint about Indigenous vegetation clearance along the road to the Eglinton River mouth. The complainant assumed incorrectly that I was planning on clearing 800 to 1,000 hectares of native forest around Bog Lake and sent his complaint to numerous government ministers. Marcus Roy used this complaint and the pressure from government ministers to motivate councillors to vote in favour of commencing enforcement proceedings against me. Council voted by a narrow margin to take enforcement action. However, Marcus Roy was fully aware at that time that this complaint referred to Indigenous vegetation clearance that was being undertaken by DOC for a boundary fence, and I had no plans to clear the area around Bog Lake. It was therefore deliberately misleading to secure councillors' support for the enforcement proceedings. Not a single Southland District councillor took the time to contact me to check the accuracy of the complaint before casting their vote. The misrepresentation of the facts by staff and legal counsel continues in their portrayal of the mediation outcomes to the two reviewers. The reviewers were left with the false impression that mediation came to nothing because of a failing on my part. The opposite is true. It was council staff who told us at the second mediation that they would seek a resolution through a court hearing, despite my having fulfilled the requirements agreed to at the first mediation. It was also at the second mediation that I was informed that a secretive 2-month bat survey had surreptitiously been undertaken along and over my property, after I had agreed to undertake a full ecological assessment of the station as per the council's application. Over the course of the 4 years from the search warrant to the conclusion of the hearing, I was subject to so many low, dirty tactics in an attempt to nail me. It felt like a personal vendetta was being waged against me. I believe that the council staff present at both mediation, the council's lawyers and ecologists, were a group who had collectively lost all sense of fair, reasonable or professional conduct. It appeared to me that the staff were out of control. They were able to act without restraint or accountability by councillors. It is galling that the reviewers, without having heard my side of the story, described me as strongly adversarial, responded with a well-resourced legal team. I'd like to remind you today that it was the council who chose to adopt a highly aggressive, heavy-handed approach towards me from the outset, when they decided to issue a search warrant and arrive unannounced at my family home with armed police and ecologists to conduct full 2-day site investigation. My livelihood was at stake, yet the council and reviewers are surprised that I stood my ground to defend myself and my farming practices. I had a small team of highly professional, competent individuals on my side, pitted against the whole council. The proceedings took a massive toll on myself and my family, both financially, physically, mentally, and emotionally. There was a massive imbalance of manpower and resources, yet the reviewers infer that the council was at a disadvantage and the victim here. What a joke. If nothing else, we want councillors to act with greater oversight of similar proceedings. I've always welcomed councillors or staff to come to Te Ara Downs to see how it is being farmed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Now, just a bit about myself. I'm a specialist resource management lawyer. I have been in practice for approaching 30 years. I spent most of my legal career at Simpson Grierson, which is known to have the biggest local authority legal practice in the country. So most of my career as a lawyer has been involved advising local authorities on resource management matters, including enforcement and prosecution matters. So I have a perspective which I think is relevant and valuable. I have always taken the view that councils as statutory bodies and public authorities, particularly in enforcement and prosecution matters, must act as a model litigant. And I'm not sure if you understand what the term model litigant involves, but I'll give you an example and hopefully it will have some resonance. So the Commerce Commission is a regulator and a public enforcement agency in the same way as councils are. And it has a policy to conduct itself as a model litigant, requires the Commission to act with complete propriety, fairly and in accordance with the highest professional standards. And another way of looking at that, particularly in my career acting for local authorities and enforcement matters, is you must act fairly, you must disclose all relevant facts, you must be objective, you must be reasonable, and you must play with a straight bat. You've got to do things the right way. So I was first engaged in December 2021, and the hearing of these proceedings took place in April 2022. So I came to it reasonably late. And when I was engaged to advise Peter and assist Rex, I did not see the council acting as a model litigant. What I saw was ill-disciplined. It was a highly punitive approach, and what I mean by that, it was designed to punish. Now that is what a prosecution is for. But this was enforcement order proceedings. There was at times dishonesty from the council in the way it sought to characterise and run its case. Another way of describing that is that it was sneaky. And honestly, I could not quite believe the situation I had come into. It does not reflect well on the council. And I can only assume that elected members did not have oversight of this. There was overreaching, and in light of the history of the proceedings, and there was a lengthy history, and it's all on the record, what the council did shortly after I was engaged was essentially launch fresh enforcement proceedings seeking vastly increased punitive orders against Mr. Charters, having essentially got agreement about matters they had mediated on. That is not the mark of a reasonable prosecutor or enforcement agency. So I've read the review, and The inferences and suggestions in the review that this litigation was driven and fomented by Peter is such an outrageous suggestion. It just makes my mouth drop open. Peter was the respondent to these proceedings, and he was on the back foot throughout because of the way the council and its legal team conducted the case. So the idea, and as you've heard from Peter this morning, the identification of the problem that kicked off these whole proceedings was fundamentally untrue. And after the case had concluded, and we were finally given disclosure of a critical report, after it could be tested in court, it was demonstrated that the entire foundation for the council entering into these proceedings was factually inaccurate and untrue. It was not Peter who was undertaking, or was preparing to undertake, clearance of native forest at Bog Lake. It was the Department of Conservation under the authority of a resource consent granted by the council for fencing work. That was the start of this whole sorry tale. So it was very clear, and don't be under any illusion, that it was the council that drove this process, and it was entirely controlled by the council at every stage. In terms of what went wrong, I regard the lawyer's job when you are dealing with council officers in enforcement roles as being to critically analyse and impose restraint and discipline on council officers. And in this area, officers are often enthusiastic and overzealous. It comes with the territory. Totally get that. I've seen it numerous times. They believe in their job and they want to achieve outcomes. But there was no discipline imposed here on the council officers. And the result was a misleading, inaccurate by omission, and ill-considered approach in evidence. And I took 2 days cross-examining the council's planning witness, breaking down 5 statements of evidence until it was abandoned by the council. That's how bad it was. You commissioned an independent review to identify the underlying problems that this case demonstrated. In my view, it's been of very limited value because it doesn't reflect what actually happened or what the court found. You have had one of the largest cost awards, both in percentage and dollar terms, ever made by the Environment Court. 80% of people's costs, $300,000 of costs, plus the legal fees that you incurred, which I understand, and there's some uncertainty about that, but I think it's in the order of $500,000. And then you engaged in an independent review at additional cost to the council and the community. And my impression and my belief is that you've wasted further money because you've commissioned a review which is based on a materially inaccurate understanding and description of the facts, and it hasn't therefore identified the issues that need to be addressed to avoid this happening again in the future. Putting to one side the factual accuracy of the alleged findings in the review, the recommendations are not responding to the issues in the case. And in any event, they're simply reflective of good practice in this area. You can find the recommendations in the review on the MFE website. There's no magic to them. You don't have to pay for them. There's good practice guidelines out there that tell you how you should be conducting yourself in this area. You don't need an expensive review to be creative with the facts. to come up with a solution on this. So I don't think the exercise that's been through assists in terms of demonstrating accountability to the community. I reread the review again last night, and every time I read it, I really, truly, I fail to understand how the portrayal of the facts can have come about. Factual errors and inaccuracies are glaring and very hard to understand, and particularly given that the full court record, evidence, affidavits, all of it, thousands of pages, was provided to the reviewers by me, not by the council team. What was provided to the reviewers was a selection. So I put the full record before the reviewers. And I'm not quite sure why the review chose to have a go at the facts again, because the court's decisions identify exactly what happened and exactly why the council failed. And so if you really want to understand what happened and what went wrong, read the court decisions. I urge you to do that. Then you might have a sense about what actions you as elected members need to take to prevent this happening again. Now I just want to hand over to Mr. Chapman.
Look, thanks, James. Look, it's been well covered. The points I think that we want to make, I just implore you to read the written response, which goes into more detail. Just two things that strike me that I just want to reinforce to the councillors, and that is, look, the object of that independent report was for you to find out what happened and why. I think the title of the report is Circumstances and Lessons. Now, you can't learn a lesson until you find out actually what happened. It's fundamental. And our understanding is that that was exactly what the objective of the report was. No one outside the council's team, was formally interviewed for the purposes of that report. Council's lawyers, council staff, one of the councillors was interviewed. No one else was formally interviewed outside the council's team. You interviewed yourself. Now, look, the court decision makes it clear as to why the council lost the case. You only have to read it. The decision after the substantive decision was delivered in Peter's favour, the decision to award Peter $300,000 costs, is a measure of how badly the council's team conducted the proceedings. As James alluded to, I think that near a record cost award in New Zealand in an environment court. And so the reviewers went to those same people that were responsible for that poor outcome to find out why it happened. Don't you think that a truly independent review would have included speaking to Peter Frauke, who lived with this proceeding for however many years it was going on? They know what happened. So do I, because I was involved from the outset. And unfortunately, the facts that were found and the conclusions in the independent review do not accord with what actually happened, unfortunately. So look, that's the reason why we are here, to set the record straight, and why we implore you to read Peter's response alongside the review, if you're going to get a balanced view of what happened. One other thing I just want to make reference to is this. Look, these proceedings were all about stewardship of our environment. That's the council's role. That's what the proceedings were apparently designed to, that was the centrepiece of the proceedings. I just want to let you know that, look, during the course of the proceedings, mediations, two mediations that we had, there was a lot of discussion with council staff about Peter's management stewardship of the farm. Peter engaged a very experienced ecologist, Calvin Lloyd, to assist him in the proceedings. Calvin Lloyd made the point repeatedly that if council were concerned about significant Indigenous vegetation, then this case was not about that. Peter cleared bracken fern, regrowth manuka scrub, and exotic weeds on the station. He did not cut or damage in any way mature Indigenous vegetation, beech forests, wetlands, or other significant areas. Calvin Lloyd said repeatedly and at the court hearing that the significant features on Te Anau Downs are the vast wetlands, and over 100 years of farming, including Peter's recent management of the station, has left those wetlands intact. They're pristine. They've been unaffected by the farming operations. That's the significant areas on Te Anau Downs, not the manuka scrub that has been cleared and re-cleared over generations. And so, look, I just want to make that point because it shouldn't be lost sight of. Peter has been portrayed as some sort of environmental vandal here, when in fact the opposite is the truth. You should also read Calvin Lloyd's ecological assessment if you want to get a true appreciation of the way in which the station's been managed. So, thank you, James. That's I think all I want to say.
Cool. Thank you. Are you finished your?
Well, I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any, but I think that's our presentation.
No, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to come and present. We've got about 3.5 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask a quick question from myself before opening it up to the floor. Just in terms of your sort of final statement with Mr. Winchester around the purpose of the review. So are you aware that the purpose of the review wasn't to look at the actual court decision and the court outcome, but rather to look at the process that the council followed?
Well, that's not entirely clear. If that was the purpose of the review, then I'm not sure why the review sought to revisit the court's factual findings. This is what puzzles me. If I'd been conducting the review, I would have done it differently. And I had the sense that a conclusion as to what the outcome of the review should be was reached early on, and the rest of the narrative was built around it. And look, I know the reviewers personally. I hold them in high regard. I don't think they've done a very good job in this instance.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes, so probably time for a quick question or two. Is there anyone from the floor that has a question?
Through you, Worship. Firstly, thank you for coming in. And while I haven't been privy to this whole case from the very get-go, I've sort of just looked at the review process, and when it was first mooted to the council about whether or not we should go through this process, I made it very clear about my own personal feelings around whether we should or shouldn't go through with it. And my feeling was that we shouldn't, based on the court's decision. You've obviously, as you said earlier, Mr. Chatra, said that this has been a stressful episode, and it's been a long-standing, drawn-out episode, and there's probably fault on both sides of the coin here with regard to things like interpretation, communication, all sorts of things. Now, I've been told that I come out with sweeping statements from time to time, and I need to reel it in and actually ask a question. But I think that there needs to be a foundation first before you put up the framework. So that's why I'm saying this to you. Now that we've gone through this process together, do you feel that the book now needs to be shut, or do you feel that you need to be given an opportunity to give us a little bit more guidance in terms of how we can do things better?
that a question levelled at me?
To all of you, or whoever wants to answer the question.
Personally, it's my livelihood, farming. Very concerning when the engagement by your council towards me, basically all the engagement has been as a result of complaints, for example, from Forest and Bird. So if that's what you call engagement with a landowner, I struggle a little bit, especially when it's been basically unpleasant and hostile engagement. Not on our side, but what we have received from your staff.
Cool, that concluded our time. So yeah, thank you very much again for coming along and taking the time to present. Appreciate you coming along. So thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Thank you.
Our report on our agenda, which is the Around the Mountains Cycle Trail Trust update, on page 33 of your agenda. Menzies in her role as councillor appointment to the trust. Trust Chair Nick Wills will be in attendance.
Oh, no, Nick's not here.
Oh, Nick's not here, sorry.
Susan coming.
Okay, Susan McKenzie's coming instead.
Sorry, Rob, can I just check a question of proceedings?
Sorry, go ahead.
Do we formally note the presence of public participation and kind of accept the information that we've just received? And also, do the attachments that were presented in that public participation get recorded in the minutes for approval next meeting?
They won't be in the minutes because they're not actually on the agenda themselves. So the public participation is a separate part to the agenda, and I believe Fiona will correct me if I'm wrong here.
There will be a note in the minutes about we had public participation and who was here, and just a brief advice on what it covered.
Yeah, so that
The video remains there.
Yeah, of course,
Is it-
online too.
Can I just jump in? The letter has been received and will be responded to. That's but it's not a matter for the rest of the meeting.
happy with that, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, I'm just wondering about process of how that information that's been shared and discussed today is then at least included in the record as far as minutes or just.
The letters go on file in the council record management system, so it is actually formally recorded and
would be discoverable under Lagoima.
correct.
Cool. Thanks for that.
So,
Sorry.
through you, can I just say something that you're not present in the chamber? Mr. Chapman has just handed a file, a clear file, which may have more information as well from what was said this morning. So.
Okay, so I'll move us now to our first item on the agenda, page 33. Welcome, Susan. Welcome.
I'm just here to present on behalf of Nick and the trustees annual report in relation to Around the Mountains Cycle Trail Trust. You may remember that Nick Wills, who has been our chair since we were established in 2001, was it, from memory? And Nick has usually provided an annual report has provided a council report into the council on an annual basis, but also has presented here. She is unable to be available today, so I have picked up that mantle, and I have Susan along beside me, who has been. It's hard to describe the value of the support of Susan to the trust, who joins in our meeting every 6 weeks, and is able to probably fill in some of the details that I don't have today because you do a lot of the work behind the scenes. Nick continues in the role of chair. She left her role in Great South in March but has continued in the role of chair. So apologises that she's not able to be here today. So you'll see on the presentation ahead that as trustees we've been involved in for 3-year terms, and that's about to come up to be re-looked at our next AGM. You may also remember some of the trustees, or know some of the trustees. You have Jean Marsh, Rex Carter, Andrew Cameron, Chris Foggin, who joined us probably about a year after we began, Garth Milkich, I may be pronouncing that wrong, who now lives in Wanaka, but was a tour operator in Te Anau, and myself. And I've mentioned Susan's role in there as well. Susan's role is funded nationally into the council. So we amended our trust deed this year to increase the total number of trustees from 7 to 9. This was agreed to by trustees just to, I think, extend the skills that are available on the board to us. And Nick, after leaving her role of Great South, has taken one of those vacancies. So currently we have no representative from Great South, but they will be looked hopefully to make an appointment in the near future. So we're still looking to appoint one other trustee, and hopefully that will occur in the next future, in the future as well, if you would say. Susan, you've put together a slide from information that we collect on a regular basis. So you'll see in that the number of pedestrians outnumbers the cyclists. And that's probably reflective of the number of people, particularly from the Kingston end.
Particularly the Kingston end, yes.
Yeah. And they tend to park in Kingston and walk up, take a short walk. You'll note on there that the counters are located at Mount Nicholas Road, Arete River, Mossburn, Lumsden, Athol and Kingston. Do you know where the counter is at Kingston itself?
Yes, it's by the first pedestrian bridge. So you go up the zigzag and then it's just at the top there.
Yes, yes. So they don't have to walk far to be counted as a pedestrian there. But it highlights the significant interest from pedestrians as well as from cyclists, and the increasing trend of cyclists taking, well, I don't know that we know whether they're starting from one end and going right to the end, and the percentage that might be just doing a component of the track.
So we do have, just to add to that, with the 5 counters, there's a specific formula which has been developed. So Jonathan Kennett and another person did a study on all the cycle trails and developed an individual formula. So the same formula has been used year on year, so we can compare the numbers. So you'll appreciate with the 5 counters, someone may go past it one way and back again, or they may do the whole trail and they go past several counters. So that formula takes that into account and gives us the calculation of these numbers. So we also had some flooding at the end of last year in September, which may have affected things, and we've seen also trends since COVID has ended. People are now doing different activities and travelling overseas and things like that. But our numbers are continuing to grow, so we're pleased with that.
With the flooding that occurred in September, it was, I guess, a bit of a test of the what is the responsibility of Southland District Council and what is the responsibility of the Trust around the health and safety aspect. So there were questions asked at the time about who advises the cyclists that there are risks and continue to cycle immediately after the flooding. And Susan was very quick to link into the council, and also we now have signs then and arrangements with the South Roads to put out those signs. I know that South Roads are very busy responding to the flooding that's occurred as well, but putting those signs out so our cyclists are aware and keeping them safe, because there were, as you heard last council meeting, I think, a number of repairs that have been required to the trail as a result of that flooding that occurred, and also further damage in the recent rains that we had. Yeah, so we are subject to that on a regular basis. So you've put together, Susan, just a snapshot of the comments that were received through the surveys that we carry out. We're required to provide into the powers that be 300 surveys per year. It is problematic getting those numbers up, but again, with the hard work of Susan and our providers along the trail, we're reaching about 250 to 300 surveys a year.
The 300 this year. We've had good support from the community.
So that's the first time we've hit that. So you see the snapshots of the comments there. I don't need to read those to you. It's lovely to see the positive responses there, but also what could make the experience more enjoyable gives ourselves as a trust to look to see about what can be done differently. The dedicated cycle path from Mavora to Mavora Lakes to Centre Hill is one that's been raised every year, I think, from the beginning, and is being looked at the moment. Accommodation is another one, and cafes and accommodation options. Recently, we had no option of cafes at Ethel, but we've now got a cafe open there again and opportunities there. So this is relating to the visitors and or locals using the track, and also compared that nationally as well.
So what it really highlights is that about 89% of those who were surveyed, this is where we get our data from, are visiting the area to ride the trail. And over, if you see that second graph there, nearly 70% are coming to Southland just for the trail itself. So it really shows the influence that it has and the significance of the trail and people cycling in Southland.
And it probably reflects the demand for accommodation in the area as well. And this has been presented previous times, just our vision, the principles we're working with, the purpose and the strategic focus. Okay. And I don't know how many have had the opportunity to read the Great South report, and this is looking at the cycling, the cycle tourism opportunities across Southland, and gives us also a further opportunity to look to see where the Around the Mountain Cycle Trail links into that. And probably our two key projects, I would say, have over the last year longer, have been the development of the website, and we're not able to link into the website here today to give you.
We could, we'll just have to do it out of the presentation and go into the internet site. So we could do that at the end.
Would you like that opportunity to have a look at the website? And the social media engagement. So with the development of the website and the social media engagement, we are understanding that it's having a positive impact on the number of the visitors to the area. The website is, I guess, just providing quality information to members of the public who are interested in completing the trail, and the social media engagement is happening on a regular basis. The feedback comes back to the trust, and we consider that at our meeting each time.
So the trust have been engaged a social media specialist, and so that has really helped with putting up appropriate posts, and with the new photography and videos that were done last year as well, we're using those. And the videos especially are getting really good hit rates.
And I think just at that time, acknowledged Great South's support in completing that photography work and the videos as well, because they shared responsibility around that, but they are outstanding. And the relationship between New Zealand Cycle Trails and Great South is an objective as well. Do you have anything to add around that?
Yes, it's been great having Nick as the chairperson because we've had that good link with Great South and done some projects with them and been involved as well with the cycle tourism opportunity assessment and the destination strategy as well, which has been put forward by Great South. With the New Zealand Cycle Trails, we have a forum each year and we meet up with them. And we're also involved with some social media campaigns. The latest one, you might think this is quite appropriate for the New Zealand and Australians. It's a Feel Free in New Zealand campaign, and they advertising danger noodles. So in Australia, do you know what a danger noodle is? No. It's a snake. So they're saying, and come to New Zealand, feel free, there's no snakes. And they wave about the little lolly snakes. So that's quite a cool campaign, which we are just involved with. So it's just nice that that's a national campaign and we can add our own marketing and label and name to that as well. And that is pushed out on our social media. So Australia they're very interested in coming to New Zealand for cycle trails, and so we're linking in with that.
They include quite a few spiders and scorpions, and a whole big long list.
The official partner program continues to be a very strong part of our relationship work with the community. We have a meeting with the community coming up on the 30th of May, which again we do on an annual basis.
And we've had 39 official partners this season. And Christine mentioned earlier about initially Athol, they had a shop, a cafe closed there, but it's been really good to see that the shop there has opened and is getting really good feedback from cyclists about what they're offering at their cafe and other amenities that they're providing.
So our projects are here, key projects are here are a bridge at Station Creek. I don't know how many of you have had a chance to cycle around the trail in the Vaughan Valley, and where Station Creek is based. It's about 27 kilometres from Walker Creek Station itself, and it's coming from that end. It's the first significant, probably unbreached creek, which becomes a torrent when the rainfall is heavy and a risk to our cyclists. Obviously, getting through if that happens on a unexpected basis. So it's looking where we have engaged Southland to do a review and complete a project plan around a replacement of that, not replacement, putting a bridge in there, which obviously comes at significant cost given its isolation and the work that's needed there. And again, just to acknowledge Susan's work and of that subcommittee, have been able to put in the first funding application that we've completed as a trust since we began. We are waiting, I think, to hear back in terms of that application, but there will be further applications coming through. Anything around Station Creek?
It's great that the trust has started, the funding plan has been developed and that fundraising has started for that project.
And the second work of another subcommittee is the trail realignment from Mabora to Centre Hill, completing a feasibility study around that first up. As you saw on the comments previously, that's it receives quite a lot of negative feedback, and many of the cyclists, particularly the tour operators, miss out part of that trail because of its unsuitability. So we're looking to see what that realignment, how that might occur, and there's been discussion with the local community and landowners and the Hamu and Revimus there around what the alternatives might be.
It's just looking at a suggested alignment, which Palmer is happy with, and the local farm managers are happy with as well. So it's really about taking the trail off the road and having an appropriate route through.
And I think that brings us to the end.
We've got a couple more.
Oh yes, I just talked before about the annual community official partner meeting, which occurs at Lumsden each year, so it's on the 30th of May. And we've talked about the feasibility study and the bridge at Station Creek. Medium term, EV charging for e-bikes, which is certainly would suit me. Not long after I started on the trust, I completed with the other trustees from one end to the other, which was the most enjoyable experience. It had fine weather all the way, so it was great. And the accommodation at Mavora Lakes, which was raised in the earlier in terms of the feedback from people, so that's kind of a longer term look at that.
Great, thank you very much. And I think if you could just pass on our thanks to the other trust members for the great work that's being done. I think this proves the value of setting that trust up 2 or 3 years ago, and having a dedicated governance of the cycle trail is, I think, paying dividends for what's happening on it. So I think it's great. And great to see those graphs actually going in that direction.
Yes.
It's very positive as well.
Yeah.
And myself talking to cyclists when I bump into them on the trail, there's always a positive vibe about it, and it's actually good to see the trail being used as well. So yeah, thank you to the trust.
I think driving up to Te Anau, as I do kind of regularly, I'm seeing far more often cyclists on that part of the trail.
In terms of the official partners, is 39 the highest number that you've had, or does that kind of...
That's the highest number, yeah. It's around sort of 36 to 38. We've had so far.
Any other questions from you?
Through you, Your Worship. Just carrying on from what Rob said, the graphs in particular, they tell us a lot, so thanks for the report. What was interesting for me was, the first one saying, well, we're exponentially moving up and up and up with the numbers of people, so that's a big tick. But the other one that was really quite interesting from my perspective was the bar graph showing that the percentage of people who were coming were visitors as opposed to local people, which is actually the opposite of what a lot of other cycle trails are actually presenting, and that's really important in terms of what we were saying in terms of the counters and the accuracy associated between like someone living locally and going back and forth versus a visitor coming through and just clicking it once. So if that's going up, that's super positive. I'm pleased at the end you said future focus would be around essentially what the customer is looking for. What is the customer looking for here? And you spoke about a feasibility study around the realignment of the trail and the bridge, and the considerable cost that will come with that. So we've got to work out what that cost value benefit will be versus maybe some of the accommodation at Mavora Lakes or the other services and amenities that may be required, and what the level of investment versus benefit has to be there. So I'm really looking forward to looking at whether there is going to be a feasibility study around that in the future. Is that a possibility?
I think at this stage we have our strategic plan sitting there, and we need to progress through that so that what we work towards is achievable. It's probably the main thing. It's a significant step, I think, having got to the position where we can submit our first funding application, and we'll see where that takes us and look towards completing or obtaining the funding necessarily for that project, because we're not looking to have council and our ratepayers contributing towards those costs. And so we'll see how that progresses and where that might take us to next. It's very helpful with the feedback that comes back in our surveys to see whether we're working in the right direction and whether we actually need to change that direction. The other part of it is linking in closely with other providers such as Field and Trail Trust and the work they're doing, and establishing the connections right through Southland, of which the Around the Mountains Cycle Trail forms a component.
Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Susan. Thanks, Christine. I'm definitely one of those local users who probably triggers the counter in Lumsden back and forth quite a few times, adding to the stats. Very much appreciate having the track and the trail multi-use for myself in town. I did just have a couple of questions. Has ES, in light of Environment Southland's long-term plan currently up for consultation, there's mention of a priority project of upgrading the Lumsden flood bank, which is the cycle trail actually goes right across the top of that. Has there been any discussion between the regional council with that proposed project and the trust, or Susan as trail manager, regarding how, if that project goes ahead, how the trail would be managed in that time?
Simple answer is no, I haven't had consultation with ES in relation to that. I know that Environment Southland did come in and do some bank re-establishment near Athol, where they had a really big washout there. They came in after the floods and did that, and that was managed with the cyclists going past fine. But no, thank you for bringing that up. I can certainly look into that further.
Yeah, that'd be great. The other question I had, I raised it previously as well, just regarding the data and the counters. We're seeing a lot of use from the Kingston end. Has there been any progress on working with the boat operators at the Wakatipu end, as far as being able to collect data as to how many people are taking bikes from Queenstown across Wakatipu and starting the trail? Based on surely from ticket sales of having a cycle on the boat, there should be some good stats and data of people using those operators or that operator. Has there been any progress there?
We just take our data from those 5 counters that we have, and we have that formula, and it's something that's been produced by Jonathan Kennett, and it's individualised to the trail. So it is something we could follow up, but to be able to hear the stats year on year, it's quite good using that formula.
Right, because the first counter is further down the trail, I guess, once it's closer to the Mavora Lakes end. So without installing a counter at the Walter Peak or Mount Nicholas end of the trail, it could be as easy as working with the boat transport operator, which is only one operator, I imagine would be an official partner. So it'd be interesting to know whether they'd be happy to assist in that partnership and collating that data, because it seems like it'd be something very easy to collate and give a really good sense of numbers coming in from that other end.
Thanks, Matt, and maybe it might be also useful to talk with them about what they see as, if there's any issues or barriers for those people wanting to come through from the Queenstown end in respect of putting their cycles and themselves on the boat, and whether there's concerns for them around the space available for that to occur.
Because I guess to go back to the conversation of when there are issues around, if the track's closed, for example, ensuring that there's good communication with that particular operator so that they're not potentially dropping off cyclists with bikes on the other side of the lake if there's a segment of the trail that's impassable at the time. So it's possibly worth really honing in on that relationship through data collation and communication for the trail management.
Thank you. And I was just wondering if we're able to go into the... Oh, it's up there. Okay. Are you able to...
Oh, I can play. So this is our shiny new website. It's got all our branding colours on it. You see at the top we can update this in terms of any events. So that was updated just a couple of weeks ago. So this is our front page. First thing you see is the map. Everyone loves a good map to see where they're going and location. And then this scrolls through the main different areas on the trail. And you can click through all of these to have a further look at those locations. And these are all click-throughs as well, in terms of organising your journey, sustainability, and these are updates in relation to the flooding. So it's all quite clear there, what's happened, that's open, that there are bypasses in place, but to use caution. And then different accommodations, you can scroll through those. Drinking, things to do. That's the front page, and then up the top, we've got all the tags to plan your trip. So we've got information about the trail, the map, planning it, and day rides. We brought day rides in because a lot of tourists just like to come and do a few hours of riding. So we've got some popular ideas in there for people. All you need to know, what's available on the trail. And here's our survey icon that doesn't move, so we encourage people to go on and click on the survey icon to complete it.
And there's also short video clips on the website as well that people can link into.
A minute.
There you go.
Sorry, that was
I hope that all encourages you all just to do more than a cycle tour from the chair and go out and do a short section of the trail at least, and fill in the survey when you've completed it.
Very good, thank you.
Through to you, Worship. I know you want to crack on, but I feel compelled to ask you this. I've done this trail several times, and I've taken tour groups through. I've guided a lot of people on the around the mountains. One concern that I have about the trail is the fact that, from a health and safety perspective, you know, there's obviously a lot of the trail that doesn't have cell phone coverage, and I always took a locator beacon with me. are we doing enough in that space in terms of if we get off at Walter Peak and we're going through the Von Valley, someone has a serious incident, what do we do in that situation? And can we have an option on here in terms of what to do if you're in that situation? Is it part of our responsibility, as a council? It's a PCBU after all. It's our asset. So do we have a responsibility, do you think? And if so, how should we go about it?
So we do have information all on the website in terms of Southland coverage. So that information is available. It's also on our pamphlets and on the maps. We do encourage people to take the beacons as well. So in terms of what we can do, we can inform people. We can't stop people's behaviour. We can't stop them from riding, when it's raining, but we're trying to do our best in terms of, we've just recently put in a new shelter. So that shelter is near one of the fords. It wasn't appropriate to put a bridge in there because the bridge just spans out too much when it floods. We do have relationships with the farm owners. They're usually the first people that are on site. They're used to cyclists going past. One of them's family member is a helicopter pilot. In terms of what we can do, I feel like we're doing as much as we can with signage, and the bridge will help as well, that we're fundraising for, to put that in. It'll just give people an option in terms of when they're in that area to be able to get over a river if it's flooded. Did you have any suggestions about?
I think the shelter's a really good practical one for a start. You are exposed out there, and to have shelter from the storm is essential. There's quite a lot of traffic that goes through and uses that road a lot. So if you get into trouble, you can go and wait in the shelter, and there's a certain amount of that someone will be driving past at some stage. I've been in a situation where I have had to go into a farmer's property, and funnily enough, knocked on the door. No one was in there. Went into the door, picked up the phone, rang the Mossburn pub. The farmer was sitting at the bar. I had to tell him that I was in his house and needed some assistance. And he said, "Make yourself at home." We're lucky that we have that ability to do that.
And no snakes.
And no snakes. Yeah. So you're right. Look, if we feel satisfied that we've done all that we possibly can, and, on a practical and reasonable level to provide the service that we need, then that, yeah.
So along that section there are 5 shelters now, so the 10 kilometres plus the one that we've just put in as well.
Right.
So
when we started, how many shelters? I don't know, you might not remember, but we didn't really have that much in the way of shelters. But I think it's a really good, practical, easy solution to help people in a dire situation. So well done.
The trust very aware of its health and safety obligations, as is the council, and we've actually got that on the agenda for the next meeting with the council. And as I say, the trust appreciated the response of the council in relation to the September flooding events, because that really raised the profile about how we're advising potential cyclists or planned cyclists coming through who may not have caught up with the news, but even the rain, there was a lot of rain.
It was coming down.
It's about whether they continue with their journey.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
I'll take a final question from Councillor Fraser.
Yeah, I think last year we were challenged to look at the site and sign up to the Facebook, and it's been really good. I've enjoyed reading those. Wondering about connectivity to the rest of Southland. I see Te Anau was mentioned. Is there any way that we're engaging those visiting to kind of continue through into Southland? That's the first question. I've got another one.
We've completed that on the website.
so in terms of, do you mean in terms of cycling in Southland? Or
Yeah, well, just connect. I mean, I just see, in the towns around the trail, it listed Te Anau, which is around the trail, but obviously the link and the connection. Are we doing anything to try and draw or encourage the visitors to come through the rest of Southland as well?
So the tour operators, quite a lot of them have tours which include Te Anau and the Lake to Lake Trail. So they'll do a few days around the mountains. They might go and stay there and then do the Lake to Lake. On the website, like you saw, we've got the other towns surrounding. So we're trying to provide people information to get them to stay. That's the key with the tourism, isn't it? The longer someone stays in one place, the more they spend, the more they see, all that sort of thing. So yes, there is some encouragement of cyclists to stay and go and look at other things in Southland.
We're in the process of establishing a memorandum of understanding with the Fiordlands Trails Trust as well. It's the signal of the need to work together and support each other as well.
And the only other thing, just looking at the map, that first map on your website, it almost looks like there's actually a road from Kingston across to Mavora where the boundary line is between the districts. It might be really technical, but I looked at it, I didn't think there was a road there. First thought, I just wonder if that line you could do a different colour or dotted, because it's the same road, same colour as the other roads.
We can have a look at that. Sure.
It's just something maybe it's just me.
Well, thank you for that, everyone. And I'll take us to our recommendations on page 34. And I'm just going to suggest that we add one in there to see that we thank the trustees for their work, because I think there's a lot of work being done on a voluntary basis. And I think it's important that we recognise that as a council as well. And I'll move to C from the chair. Is there someone seconded by Councillor Ruddenclaw? All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? That's carried. Quick one now, just to have a quick break for a morning tea. We'll just do 15 minutes, come back at 11:30. March 2024 funding round. First on page 35 of your agenda, and I'll have Catherine Sam.
Morning, everybody. So for this round of the Sport NZ Rural Travel Fund, we have 8 applications that we've received. We've got 13,749 left in the pot, and the recommendations for allocation based on the formula total 9,400. So we've got the allocations there. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Kate. I guess the first question for me is, with that balance being available, that's still safe? We don't risk losing that or anything?
Yeah, no, that just rolls over.
Are there any other questions from the floor? Looks like pretty straightforward. So there being none, I'll take us to our recommendations. So we've got that we received applications for Fiordland College 1,500, Central Southland College 1,500, Takatini Netball Club 400, Netball Club 1,000, Menzies College Netball 1,500, Northern Southland College 1,500, Mosman School 1,000, and Netball Fiordland 1,000. Quite a good spread of the district there, which is good to see. And that we approved the financial report for the Sport New Zealand Travel Fund as at 31st of March. Someone in a position to move? Councillor Graney, seconded by Councillor Keast. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? It's carried. Okay, so our next item along similar lines is the District Initiative Fund allocations for March 2024. This is on page 43 of your agenda, and we have Kath again to do this one.
Right, so for the District Initiatives Fund, we've got 7 applications. We have remaining 41,946 left to distribute. So if I just quickly go through the applications, we have Citizens Advice Bureau applying for operational funds. They've requested 5,000. South Island branch of muscular dystrophy, that is towards their field worker travel costs in our Wallace, Takatimo and Oriti areas. They have requested $3,000. Royal New Zealand Plunket Trust, this is for their injury prevention services. This is across all of our community board areas, just except Rakiura. They have requested 6,478. Amateur Radio Emergency Communications Southland, they are purchasing a new communications support vehicle and have requested 15,000. Southland Fish and Game Council, they are building a new jetty and pier and refurbishing boat ramp at Lake Monowai. They've requested 10,000. Southland Land Search and Rescue, They are purchasing a new custom trailer to hold all their equipment and be like a mobile communications hub. They're requesting 10,000. And lastly, the Otago Museum Trust Board, they have a vape and smoke-free science showcase roadshow. They're currently doing some areas and would like to bring it to Southland in July and September. They've requested 23,650. And just probably the only comment I'd like to make on that one is the reason why that request is so high is at the time when they were applying, and I spoke to them, we didn't have a lot of applications in at the time. They weren't quite sure how much to apply for, and I just said, look, send in your wish list. So they're well aware that that amount is not probably available to them. So they just adjust how many locations they do depending on how much funding they get and things like that. So so that's a comment I have to make on that. There's recommendations there. Of course, you're welcome to discuss them, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Cool. Thanks for the Catherine. Yeah, it's obviously trying to split 73,000 into 42 isn't an easy job, and you've done some work there for us already and your recommendation. I wonder if it's worthwhile, if other agreements around the table, to just go through each one individually and just double check and we can ask questions on each one. So I'll start with the first one. I think we have a conflict of interest from one of our councillors on this one. The Citizens Advice Bureau, are there any questions from members?
Thank you. It's a comment rather than a question. It's very difficult for many of these agencies to provide funding assistance for operational costs. So it's good to see that there is an avenue available for these organisations that do good work across the community.
Councillor Grant?
Thank you, Richard. Just one comment, I think, on this particular application is it's quite difficult to quantify what percentage of their clients are in Southland because their data is very generic, for want of a better word. It just says you can access on the website, and I know from some of the other entities that we have, when you're in a rural area, people generally want to talk about issues face to face, and don't necessarily use the website for being able to access. You don't know what you don't know. So although that information is available, I think quite a lot of these types of organisations do depend on that face to face. So that's my comment really of how we evidence the benefit to Southland as opposed to just Invercargill.
I'm happy to follow up with them and get some more information. I mean, this is an organisation that is likely to come back, again and again.
Well,
so,
they've been before and we've funded them previously. I noticed we didn't do that last year.
So you comfortable?
They didn't apply. So we funded them in September 2021 and September 2022. So I think they probably just didn't get around to putting it in last round and done it this round.
Are you still comfortable with funding conquest in there, or is it just a comment?
I think it would be good to have that additional information.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of their entire operating costs, 138,000, we're giving them 5.
Yeah, it's not, in my mind, it's not a significant amount when you look at the overall picture. But I think it's something that's worth having. We don't know, there's no real data here on how many people they would see. And how many, what the locations of those people would be, where they would be from.
It sort of comes back in also to the actual application itself. All through the earlier parts of it, it refers to Invercargill City, Invercargill City, Invercargill City. And it's only in the very, very end of it that it actually suddenly, Southland comes into it. And I just threw that some thought as what Sarah had about it'd be neat to see just
how much benefit is our region getting.
Because you could go out quite a way out of Invercargill City and still, like within the city boundary, the urban area itself, but you're still within easy reach of the city.
Thank you. So, do you?
Oh, just a comment. I think perhaps the connectiveness in Southland is that we probably all benefit if people in stress are helped in our region, as it were. That there'll be spin-offs all over the place, some of them family related and some just, if it stops some tragedy happening, we probably all gain.
So I'm sensing a general comfort for the $5,000 on that one. Cool, so I move to the second one, the Southland Muscular Dystrophy Association of New Zealand. Any comments or questions on this one?
I just noticed they're talking sort of the Arete eastern side of it. I just wondered what coverage does the rest of Southland have?
I think that's their clients in the Southland district currently, so that may change in the future.
Exclusive to that?
No, that's just what they've got on their books at the moment.
So I'm sensing again a general comfort for that one. Not asking for a huge amount. The Royal New Zealand Plunkett Trust. Councillor East.
Your Worship. Yeah, I struggle a wee bit with Plunkett and how they've taken away from the local, so much local support that they had, and they've taken it all to a national sort of level. And I would quite like to see statistics on how many people they're actually helping. You know, this is specifically for seats and restraints for people who can't afford it.
They did have listed in their application how many were going to each area.
That's what they're saying. How do we know what the uptake is?
I mean, I think that would be provided in their accountability.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see.
I guess the certainty that the $4,000 is spent just on Southland District.
Yeah, and where it is.
And I mean, all my dealings with them, they're pretty upfront with everything, and they do complete their accountability on time and all that kind of stuff. So they've got a history of,
Yeah, I just would appreciate knowing that how many are actually going, how much of this is, the value of this is going to our people.
I agree with the comments, thank you, or that is going into our area, and that the seats are a replacement of previous seats as opposed to new ones, because they expire, every 5 years? 10, is it?
Yeah, I've got concern that they've left Rakura off this one. It's almost as if there's no babies and young children on Stewart Island. And I can state clearly there's a lot. And in the case of the islanders, many of them have two. They have a seat in their vehicle on the mainland, and other seats, and sometimes the seat that's being used on the island is old.
Yeah.
And so
would you like that feedback incorporated too?
Yeah.
I'm happy to follow that up.
Yeah.
Get back to you.
So we're still comfortable with the amount given those two bits of feedback? Nodding. Cool. The Amateur Radio Emergency Communications, Southland, very important work that this group does. Councillor
Through your worship. Yeah, I see a correlation between AREC and Southland Lansar.
Yeah.
And so I think AREC do a really good job. They're very professional, and I've got no qualms with that. They obviously, to reach their overall objective, they're looking at 291,000, which is significant. But also Lansar are looking at, I believe it was 54,000. So that's a combined total of $345,000. Is there, and of course, you know, AREC are looking for a vehicle, and Lansar are looking for a trailer. So is there any communication between the two, because they're so inextricably linked in what they do, with regards to consolidating or looking at the capabilities between the two, not only on a practical level, the vehicle joins to the trailer, but also from an IT and communication perspective? Is there any...
There was a mention, I think, in one of them about connecting with the other, I think. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how it all works, and
I mean, I assume, they would need their own kit.
Yes.
And they may be in different places.
Yeah.
So, I'm not really sure how it all works, and it's just a coincidence that we've had them both.
It's kind of coincidental, but I think
at the same time. Yeah.
I mean, one can't do the job without the other.
Yeah.
So I just wondered whether or not there was any, because it is a lot of money, and we want them to achieve what they want to achieve,
Exactly,
regardless of how it's funded. But it would be just interesting to know if there's any correlation between the two in terms of what they're trying to get. Yeah.
I mean, I'm happy to follow those up as well.
Thanks.
Did you have something you want to add, Councillor Sprague?
Yeah, just sometimes they are definitely in different locations, the same result, but because one setting up remote radio aerials, etc., for communication, the Landsar group could be in a totally different
location.
Yeah, given our remoteness in Southland, that's
Yeah.
very important as well. So are we pretty comfortable with the $9,500?
Yes.
Southland Fish and Game Council for a GDP Councillor East.
I'm struggling with this one. I've seen it go distribute that money to the amateur radio and influenza rather than, I think that if you've got a boat and you're on Lake Monowai, you can probably put a little bit towards the beauty.
I have to struggle with this one as well. I suspect everyone realises why, that on the island we have to fund all our own jetties and water facilities. I know this is not a council-owned one, but to me they should be funding it themselves if they...
I just wonder who'll end up stuck with it and owning it when everybody else is out of the way, sort of thing.
Also, there seems to be a general consensus to not support this one.
Yes.
And I go as far as to say that we split the money evenly between amateur radio and the one that we haven't reached yet, which I think is next. Would that be kind of what you're suggesting, Councillor East?
Happy with that? Willing to listen to
Or it could, the Museum Trust Board one as well, that if we can put extra money in there, because I think what the cause for what they're promoting definitely needs support.
Well, I wonder, we'll leave the 5K up in the air at the moment, and when we get to the end, we can have a look at potentially how we apportion that. So just double checking we're not in support of that one. Nodding, okay, thank you. Councillor Menzies?
I think it's just some of the feedback as well, just supporting Councillor Duffy's point, because with the long-term maintenance of this and where might that sit eventually.
Councillor Southland Land Search and Rescue Incorporated. So $8,500. No comments, questions on this one. All seems pretty straightforward. Cool. The Otago Museum Trust Board. Any comments or questions on this? 8946. So I imagine you've just arrived at that with a formula.
Yeah.
Councillor Menzies?
Was there any feedback from the provision of this work in the Otago area?
I did attach a couple of articles. They had lots of links.
Wondering about direct feedback from the schools or others who they...
I don't have any on file, but I can certainly ask for it.
Councillor Green?
My comment was there was a note in here that actually said that this was something that was MB funded. So central,
That was just up until June this year.
June this year.
Yeah.
It's just interesting that we're now trying to pick up something that was essentially.
Few of those requests coming.
Councillor Wilson?
Sorry, I have my hand up regarding the fish and game one.
Oh, yeah.
We've passed that.
No, you're welcome to talk about that one now. I don't mind. Sorry, I missed you. Sorry.
I don't actually have a. I mean, I kind of do have an issue with the $5,000 on that one, but right now I'm just I guess quite open-minded about the fact that there's a lot of inconsistency around who does what in terms of water facilities around the whole region. It actually surprises me that building a jetty within the national park that will be used by lots of recreational users only has a project cost of that amount. So I'm actually really interested to know how can council work with Fish and Game, understand what they do, understand what DOC does, understand what other wharf and jetty operators. There's obviously a lot of inconsistency around the whole of Southland of who does what in terms of jetties and wharf infrastructure, and it's conversations that us as councillors are involved in other areas. So I'm actually more intrigued around that application, and I do support putting the recommended amount into there. I just want that recorded.
Cool. Thanks, mate. Anything further on the Otago Museum Trust Board? Are we fairly comfortable based on some of the conversations we've had with funding that amount, or are we wanting a bit more? Fairly comfortable?
It feels, what Sarah said, to reiterate the same thing, that it feels like a central government initiative that we are now having to fund. I see the inside government mailer that's just popped in my mailbox today, also saying that the Asthma Foundation is asking for a ban. This should all be centrally funded, technically. There's just that twinge of, yep, I see the wider benefits, but then there's a whole lot of things that have spin-offs. Yeah, this one I am struggling with, just because, yes, there is a benefit, but is it we who should be doing this? It will be a national initiative ultimately to get vape shops and so on out.
So are we thinking potentially not that one, or a reduced amount, or?
Reduced amount, I would say.
How much was it again? I've just lost it.
They're asking
$9,000,
8946. Oh, sorry, they're asking 23,650. We're recommending 8946, but I mean we can put anything we like there. So you're thinking what, maybe $5 grand?
Yes.
Everyone else sort of, Councillor Duffy, Councillor?
Oh, I'm just not so sure. I mean, the government seems to be less enlightened about smoking than we would like anyway. And I mean, it's our young people, and we're seeing the amount of vaping and all that going on. And I just wonder about I mean, if you knew the program was going to be successful, I think it's cheap. We don't know because it's new, but there seems to be expertise there that's available to us. I think perhaps we should take a bit of a risk, and hopefully err on the side that hopefully a good result would come out of it, and review it in the future once we got some results.
So Councillor Ruddencore, Councillor Menzies, and then back to you.
Thank you, Rob. I'm listening to what you're saying, Paul, but if we only invest $5,000 into this, how far of a reach in Southland are we going to get anyway? They've listed what schools are going to go to. What is $5,000 going to do for this program? Are we going to get schools busing them into a main centre? Because 5,000 is certainly a huge difference to 23,000 on the application.
It's 8, 9 on the.
Oh, 8, 9
is sitting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's just understanding if they don't reach the total amount they've requested, is it still going to be provided? And I'd really like to see the data coming from the schools and others that they've visited as to what impact it has made. That the schools are reporting has made a difference within the school setting to what they're seeing. I'm fine with it going ahead, I guess, at the amount that's been nominated, but I just feel it's a bit short of that information, and particularly when the Otago area, I guess, has received the benefit of the government funding and now coming into the Southland area and needing to support that. But it's a very good cause if it's able to make has successful outcomes in terms of what it is aiming to achieve. And I guess,
obviously the Otago was the pilot program, and now, I don't think they would be wanting to take it other places if they didn't feel that it was worthy and successful. So I'm sure they will be getting feedback from schools.
Councillor Vaporai, Councillor Gray, Councillor Keast.
my concern just still remains. It's not this particular amount, it's the fact that until central government legislation follows this, we could just be pouring this and nothing happening, because we've tried to be, I think we, as a council, also actively promoted smoke-free, vape-free messages and so on. But the fact is, most schools have these really flash shops just around the corner, and I just wonder how effective this money is going to be without being backed by serious legislation there. Thank you.
Granny?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just looking at the page 151, which has got the expenditure breakdown. And if you take the 12, even the staffing side of it, 12,800 divided by 320, that's 40 days, assuming they both need to be at a training session, that's 20 days. It doesn't even, where they've said they'll attend is nowhere near the 20 days. We need not more than a week's work in there by the look of it. Assuming that it's a full day workshop, which I don't recall. I would doubt this will be a full day.
That's a good point. I'll just do Councillor Keys first and then Councillor Menzies.
Yes, I concur that this is a great it sounds like it's a great program. Would be interesting to know what successes the schools are seeing after the event, but also the commentary around, you know, legislation seems to date to have been blind to the damage that vaping can do, and so for them not to be using some of the tax that they would get off smoking, from smoking, okay, it probably goes into health anyway, but there's an element of this should be funded by central government, and so in supporting them this time, if we were to do that, can we go back to them and say, what support do you need to actually add our voice to going back to central government, say this is vastly needed to support young people, realising that vaping is not safe. You know, like there's been a whole lot of commentary around that it's the best way to get off smoking, but people have perceived that it's reduced risk, there's no risk with it, but it's actually the next wave of health issue that's coming our way. So, supportive of it, but I wouldn't want to see them coming back every year to be asking for funding for it, because the funding for it should sit somewhere within the central government coffers. So, I don't know whether we can add in that following a review of it, we would want them to be going back to central government with their support to say that we're that this has been successful and that it needs funded.
We can certainly express that to them and say, if we're funding this, but it would be better.
Support, like add our weight, council's weight behind the fact that it's been successful would be, but we don't want to fund it again as to be, promoted.
Councillor Menzies?
Thank you, Bishop. It's just difficult to know from the application whether they're going to a school for the morning and the school puts classes through one by one, and then they move to another school in the afternoon because,
it says that it says 8 schools, and then, but if you break the figures down, the accommodation is also 20 nights of accommodation.
It could even potentially be done online as well as a module that the teachers could actually show. Well, I guess one option that we may have, and it doesn't fit in with the time frame of the tour that they're looking at, is to request further information and clarification to come back for the next round. That's what the plans are as well.
That's what they asked for.
So it's very hard to actually see from my position where we still, it seems to be very mixed, but it seems to be leading towards potentially a no or a reduced funding. What's kind of the, or funding in full? Councillor Menzies?
I'm happy to support funding in full, given the significance of this issue in our community but with a kind of report back to see where this is going, recognising we're only a portion of the funding that's needed to.
We can always request them to come and speak to following the program delivery.
I understand this is a
I'm
one-off.
sure that
This is a one-off.
Yep.
We'll have them coming back to this.
Councillor O'Brien.
Through you, Worship. Just been thinking about what just Brett said earlier about the attractiveness of vape shops, and we have had, we have talked about this, and I'm just wondering about the relative value from a council perspective and from a governance perspective in terms of finance being put towards how we look at this legislatively speaking, not only from our own perspective but from every other council in the country, and what the overall benefit would be versus this I don't want to say piecemeal approach, but yeah, I guess understanding the broader picture. So I know we've had papers on this before about the smoke-free vape stuff, but we can send a message, but also I think there has to be a correlation between sending the message and accessibility. And as governance, we have a responsibility, I believe, from a health perspective, on consistently focusing on investment into legislation that prevents our young people from taking on board this kind of activity, in conjunction with our parents and our schools and our counsellors. So, once again, another sweeping statement, not a question. Said my piece.
Appreciate your input, Councillor.
Thanks.
Okay, so our recommendation for that one is nearly 9,000. So I guess there's three options: 0, about half of that, or the 9,000. Is anyone against, after all that good conversation, doing the full 8946 that's been recommended? So we're kind of sitting
As a one-off, they understand
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is
with
it very
those
clearly.
Yep.
Yeah.
And also potentially, I think, a report back to council on the, because that will also give some publicity when they come and speak to council.
Yeah. Well, I think all these groups should be reporting back to us, surely.
I mean, they do fill in
Yeah.
accountability.
And it'd be good to see them.
Well, actually, and this is probably I'll get to you in a sec, probably for the workshop, but it'd actually be quite good to actually see the accountability reports coming through to council as well, so we get to see those ourselves. But yeah, I'll save that for the workshop. Councillor Byers and then Councillor Fraser.
Thanks, Rob. We seem to quite easily forget that we're on track to owe an awful lot of money. So we're giving away money, $200,000 over the last 3 years, that we don't actually have. So I do question whether this is a role that council should be involved in. And the cost of giving this money away, I mean, we don't see that, but there's a lot of friction in preparing all these reports and the time it takes to disperse money that we don't have. I would just say
so that's a long-term plan, potentially workshop discussion. At the moment, we've got this in front of us, and it's an initiative that we are doing. So yeah, for the purposes of today, we do have the money in front of us too.
Well, you asked whether perhaps we give the full amount or not much. I'm saying not much for everything.
Councillor Fraser?
Yeah, just the idea of asking these guys to come and speak to council, I think it would be both informative to us, but would also help raise awareness. So yeah, I mean, if it fitted in with coming and they could even Skype into us or something, it would be great to hear from them.
Councillor Duffy?
No, I didn't actually have anything to say. I disagree with Councillor Byers. I think this is not actually giving money away, it's investing money in a huge volunteer pool that is of priceless value to our communities.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go down to our recommendations here when I can scroll. So we've got A through to D, D being that we receive all of the applications. So is someone in a position to move A through to D? Councillor O'Brien, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye. Councillor O'Brien.
Okay, who seconded?
Councillor Fraser.
Right,
I'm paying attention, you see.
I heard that I wasn't.
I'll do E1 separately, given that we've got a conflict of interest on that one to make it easier. So, Citizens Advice Bureau for $5,000. Is someone happy to move that? Councillor Duffy, seconded by Councillor Boak. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? No. Councillor Byers is against.
You want your dissenting vote recorded?
Okay, is it best to change that $5,000 now, or we'll just do them individually?
You did them individually.
So the next one will go through South Island branch of the Muscular Dystrophy Association of New Zealand, $2,000. Someone like to move that? Councillor Graney, seconded by Councillor Keith. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Nay.
Councillor Byers. The Royal New Zealand Plunket Trust, $4,000. Someone happy to move that? Councillor Ravenclaw, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Nay.
Right, I'm just going to jump to the Southland Fish and Game Council now. I should have actually done that one second if I was, in case we wanted to change that amount, but we can do that anyway. So Southland Fish and Game Council, so we talked about not doing this one. So do we want to split that amount off now, and do we have a recommendation of where that splits to?
Yeah, I'll recommend we decline it and put 2,500 on those, the emergency radio and on the Southland land and
So I'll
rescue.
Do we have a mover for that one? Seconded. Councillor Keast. So that's to decline that application. So all those in favour of declining the Southland Fish and Game Council, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
No.
No.
Councillor Wilson, Councillor Ravenclaw.
Do you want your dissenting votes recorded?
Yes, thanks.
So should we move now?
I'm sort of leaning your way.
So the amateur radio emergency communication Southland, $9,500. Mover for that one, please. Councillor Rainey, seconded by Councillor O'Brien.
Can't we actually move the different amount to watch the...
I'll do that as a separate one. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Nay.
Councillor? That one's carried. Southland Otago Land Search and Rescue for $8,500. I'd like to move that. Councillor Keith, seconded by Councillor Boparai. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Thank you. And the Otago Museum Trust Board for 8,946. Someone in a position to move that one? Councillor Spraggan, seconded by Councillor Fraser. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against?
Nay.
Thank you. It's carried. Councillor Duffy.
Oh, look, I'm sorry I cut my tongue out, but I just wonder if Councillor Wilson raised his view about the wharf, the jetty one, that we possibly didn't discuss that at all, given a different point of view. I'm just wondering, and I'm not trying to tell you what you should do, but I'm just wondering if we were a bit hasty with that.
Well, is someone, have you got a different view?
Oh, well, I'm prepared to be open to it.
Because I guess what Councillor Wilson was referring to was a broader discussion, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, looking at outside.
I mean, I listened to the discussion, and I possibly should have, instead of the dissenting vote, I don't know the standing orders, how this thing works, but should have motioned that we do support it, and if someone wants to second that, then I guess we enter a discussion. But we're past there. My point, I guess, was it's intriguing that we're in discussions around infrastructure and things like that, particularly water facilities being one of those discussions. This seems like a contribution to an infrastructural project, albeit not in the district but in the national park, but it ticks the same boxes as any infrastructure project that we would be taking some part in. It seems aligned with that. So from a funding point of view, a $5,000 investment out of this particular fund seems completely in line with what this fund would be for. If that was, for example, a jetty in Lake Te Anau, and this was a $5,000 grant from the Fiordland Community Board or something, that would just seem like a no-brainer. It's out of the district because it's in the national park. It's going to be an asset owned by a different entity. That entity does have a very user pay model based on a licensing system, but also it's free for use really for any recreational use for tourism or other residents. So based on that and the wider thought of what is the future for our infrastructural strategies in the region, particularly in regards to things like water facilities, I don't see an issue of contributing $5,000. It actually seems like quite a low amount, considering this is a long-term infrastructural piece. And some of the applications on this are for kind of one-off events or initiatives. This is hopefully a piece of infrastructure that's going to be in place for the longer term.
With regard to your comment about being out of the district, it's actually in our district. It's just outside of our infrastructure management or jurisdiction is probably a better word, but it is.
Yeah, jurisdiction.
It's not our answer.
Councillor Keys.
Thank you. My difference of opinion here is this is actually a commercial entity. It is based on requiring people to, Southland Fish and Game have applied for it, and yes, they're saying everybody can use it and there's no fees. Well, the fishermen around the place need to have a touch of reality that they need to put money up for these sorts of infrastructures that are supplied. And if Fish and Game can't work out how to fund this from their licensing, well, yeah, I see them as a commercial entity. I know that probably some people would debate that with me, but I see them personally as a commercial entity, so I don't support it.
Well, based on that, through you, Your Worship, I guess the question is it a commercial entity? If that is the case, then does it satisfy the funding criteria for what we're, is there any sort of potential breach in terms of have they met all of the requirements if they are a commercial?
I don't think they're set up.
They would say that they're not.
They would say that they're not, but it's either black or white. They're either a commercial entity or they're not. If you're saying that they're a commercial entity, does that question their ability to apply for funding through us? This is my question.
But I guess, yeah, I mean, what's the definition of a commercial entity in terms of, and I mean, that's probably another good question for our follow-up workshop that the Citizens Advice Bureau be determined as a commercial. I suppose it's not for profit. It's
a not-for-profit trust. So I guess in my mind we'd have to be fairly clear about, what they're eligible for depending on what kind of entity they are.
I'm still against the structure, and it's just been pointed out to me, the actual wharf is a luxury because they do have access. Mind you, it's cold when you have to walk into the water, but my comment I was going to make is that I'll fully support going forward looking at water activities throughout the district, but anyone who's tried to work with DOC in relation to water activities and wharves, don't expect it to be solved overnight. As many of the council staff in the building will fully understand that we've gone through years of it on Stewart Island.
Councillor Wilson, have you put your hand up?
Yeah, I guess the conversation around whether it's a commercial entity, it's it's a non-for-profit entity, and it does have also some statutory authorities. Whether that's right or wrong in today's day and age, but that's not the discussion. As I said, I'm intrigued to see how a different entity can succeed on a project such as building a water facility in the national park, dealing with DOC. And if our contribution to help them get over the line, and it should be pending them and able to get that over the line that the contribution is received, that seems like a very low investment from us to what would be seen as a successful fruition of a project. And I'd hope that we'd be able to see the same fruition in our own water facilities jurisdiction, a lot of which actually do have commercial interest as well. So the other point I want to make is with that statutory authority that the non-for-profit group has, they are also quite a significant affected party when it comes to resource consents and management, and it's important for council to be working with other entities, because any future things we do with that involves resource consent, this is one of the entities that we should be working closely with. I know there's a history with that entity, particularly regarding the cycle trail, for example, but in the interest of working with our other local strains that they're a council, I've never really seen them described as a council before, but I guess that's what it is. I don't think we should dismiss what part they do play in the district, in the region, even though there's plenty of questions of what types of statutory authority they do actually have. It's important to build relationships and support each other and what we're all trying to do as individual entities.
Cool. Thanks, Matt. And yeah, thank you, Councillor Duffy, for actually raising this. I think it was important to bring that up and revisit this based on what's been said. So to revisit recommendation E5, we need a 75% majority to do that. So I can, I guess, put the recommendation that we revisit E5, and I'll move that from the chair. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second.
So all those in favour, if you could please raise your hand.
Sorry, we're voting in favour of it being revisited, or...
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Where are you going?
And Matt is 7. So
Count yourself?
I didn't count myself.
That's 8.
8. So that's 75%. Who's good at maths? That probably will be, won't it? The accountant in the room has said, yeah. Have you got your calculator out, Brett?
It is all good.
It's all good.
8 out of 12 is good.
So we are able to now revisit recommendation E5.
No, record my dissenting vote against that.
Okay.
Does anyone else want to record the dissenting vote against that?
Happy to revisit.
Yeah, I will.
Councillor Reagan.
Hang on, I might need to read more box.
So we're just bear with us for a second.
75% of the members present and voting must agree to the revocation or alteration. So I think we're dropping.
8 out of 12 is only 66.
We have 12 here today.
Yeah,
So we have
2 down.
11.
No, not.
Okay, so that has failed.
Easton,
So that's-
Reagan. Lost as there was not 75%.
That's the first time we've done that this time.
With Councillor Wilson seconding the motion, the fact that he's on coming in by teams enables him to have.
It still counts as quorum at the moment because there's yeah, it still counts, yes.
Yes, so
there was an extension to the rules until end of September this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, I guess an apology from me as the chair for not picking up Matt's question earlier, and that would have avoided all of this. But good to test standing orders and go through the process as well. Okay, so where we're up to, we've done all of them now. We've just got that $5,000 that we need to split. So it's been suggested by myself that we split it evenly between amateur radio and land search and rescue. Are there any further advances on suggestion for that?
Through your worship, from memory, I think someone mentioned about the Otago Museum Plus Board.
So that's 2, yeah.
So was it you, Paul?
Yeah, no, I did,
Oh,
but
you
I'm
did.
quite happy with the 250.
Okay, all right, that's all.
So if we put through an F, between number 4 and...
It's a 5,000 taken out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So I'll move that from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Keast. Is there discussion on that? Motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Advise you.
Nay.
No.
And you want yours recorded, Matt?
I'm confused where we're at, but that's okay. I'm on Teams and a bit isolated.
So we've just
this...
split the $5,000 from the fish and game equally.
Oh, yes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, descending vote on that.
Thank you. These are always challenging I guess just recognising the work that Kath's done to get us to this point as well, and getting the initial recommendations, which again involved probably a bit of work on your part, so thank you very much for that. Declare that one carried, and thank you everyone for a very good report. And that will feed into our workshop following this agenda, no doubt, as well.
Thank you.
Okay, so our next item, which will be 7.4, is our forecasted financial position for the year ending 30th of June 24. Welcome, Joni, and welcome, Joni.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Your Worship, members of Council. This report was presented to the Finance and Assurance Committee on the 24th of April. Subsequent to this meeting, staff have identified 3 further unbudgeted expenditure items that we are seeking approval for. These have been highlighted in yellow in the resolutions as well as attachment C. Further explanations are found in paragraphs 14 to 16 and 34 to 36 of the report. I apologise, I'm going to request that we change an amount of one of these, the community housing in Edendale.
So recommendation E on page 55.
That's right. Please, could we change that to $45,000?
Community housing in Edendale.
Oh, I see, so that's the copy and paste.
Yeah.
We are happy to answer any questions.
Anything else? You've got Sam and Mark at the table as well. Is there anything you guys want to do before I open up for questions?
We're happy to explain the background a bit to this because it relates to a previous resolution you passed around the repairs to these 2 units, and at the Waikaia meeting we were asked to progress and come back to council, so we've done some work on what we hope is an acceptable solution.
So are there any questions from the floor?
About the report as a whole or about that aspect of it? Sorry.
Either or, yeah.
So just in Edendale again, I'm just wondering, has there been any progress with the insurance on the sewage damage?
Through Your Worship, I have sent some responses to Councillor Bokarai's question, and I believe we do not have a full estimate of the cost yet. We are going to have a meeting with the with all the parties in May.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just in respect to the community housing, appreciate the further work that's been done by staff in relation to that, and if for the cost of $45,000 that puts two houses in respect of being able to be tenanted again fairly soon, then I would support to occur.
Just for clarification, with 45 and 23,175.
Oh, thank you. 45 total, or
45 plus 23, so 23 for Otautau and 45,000 for Edendale.
Oh, right, okay, sorry, I didn't read the 2, yep, so in support of that to occur, because I expect there's been so robust work occurring on that over the last week, yeah.
Yes, there has been, and it's a significant reduction in the amount that we initially came to you with in November, $300,000.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So the work will be able to proceed as soon as that money's approved?
Yes, that's correct. We have, particularly the Otautau unit, we have quoted and the work ready to go. And the Edendale unit, we've estimated the total cost. We have a fixed price around the floor repair, which is a critical part to lift and track the further issues that may be led to the floor lifting in there. So the short answer is that yes, the work will get underway quickly if you approve this request.
Very good.
Councillor Vaipara?
Thank you for the responses, Johnny. I'm just looking at the email you've sent us. The first one, page 57, paragraph 26 that you have responded to. So we've run over budget or the shortfall 1.2 million. These contracts all backdate to July 2017, right? So does that mean we expect more of these budgetary shortfalls to be coming up if we haven't got updated contracts from 2017?
Thank you. I'll answer. Try and answer to that. So what we've done is because our each LTP or 3-year period we receive funding from NZTA for the 3-year funding block, and that doesn't generally change with the exception of lots of emergency events. And as such, unless councils get to increase funding and effectively do unsubsidised work, we have to live within our means of that 3-year budget. So all that is doing is allocating or reallocation of funding from capital items like our pavement rehabilitation to our maintenance activities because of cost increases that have occurred over that 3-year period. So things like we can cut back, so we can keep the budgets the same for our maintenance activities such as pothole repairs, growth, etc. But then obviously we're going to have a reduction in levels of service. So to combat the increases we've seen from cost fluctuations, we shifted funding from our capital
program to
maintenance activity. So the overall budgets remain the same as where we're spending that money.
So that means we should be expecting a few more Hartley coming in because this is 2017, and as you say, we can't move that. So there'll be more of these coming along to councils.
So the budgets are set on an annual basis. Yeah. It's just based on the works program. So if cost increases go, then there'll be a continued increase, I suppose, for budget, and that's set through the LTP process. Because they're longer term contracts, those costs have to be revisited
every year.
Effectively, as opposed to a one-off construction contract for that season where we get a cost for that particular project. So it's revisited on an annual basis.
So pretty much the only reason for this increase is the inflationary impact, nothing else, nothing is changing.
Just to deal with inflation increases.
Thank you.
Which is quite high, probably about 30%, isn't it, for roading? Is that
over the last 3 years, we've probably 28 to 30%. Yeah. Because we've seen petrol's gone up, and that makes a big component of that.
For the general ratepayer, the perception is that inflation is sitting at CPI, whereas that's not what's happening in this space. Through your worship, if I may ask, the other one, the second answer, is that 250,000, Johnny, completely just for the wind farm project? All of the $250,000?
Mr. Chair, no. I believe that our response just highlights 3 areas. Okay. So one of them is in terms of the resource consents that are coming in. We're getting contractors in to help us undertake those while we were doing our training. The second one is in regards to the wind farm, and the third one was we've got a consultant coming in who was managing the thing or overseeing those operations. So they're all different people.
No, that I understand, but this is all related to the same project. Is it?
It's not a project. It's different activities within the resource consenting area.
Right, not just the wind farm alone.
Correct.
Yes, that's what I was asking. Thank you. And the last one, I believe, point 4, the 300,000 increase in the toilets on Princess Street, Riverton. I was speaking to Mark this morning. He's not here, but he tells me that it's a. Oh, there you are. Sorry. You moved places.
Your Worship, the name of that project is incorrect, but 300,000 is spread across more than just the street toilet. Joni should be able to tell you the other toilets.
Just explain this one, elaborate on this one. I'm not sure on this at all.
We have to get better at making sure our project names are.
So what happened here? Just for the benefit of everyone.
So originally, we were going to refurbish the Princess Street toilet in Riverton. However, the community board at that time decided that the Taramia Bay toilet was a priority. So we changed the funding to do the Taramia Bay toilet, and we didn't change the title of the project because it was already in the LTP.
Right. And we have a 300K underspend in the other 3 toilets that makes this up.
So this is to cover the movement of the budgets that were set aside for the 3 other projects.
The Dunsdale,
Mosman,
And so in some of those projects we have made savings as well.
Have you not had to cut the scope of anything? Because the 300 underspend is substantial, so I'm wondering, have you had to cut the scope or anything?
In terms of the scope of works?
Yes.
I guess it's how we went about purchasing our toilet projects this year, and also when we went through the September rationalisation, we looked at pushing some of this money out, and now we're having to bring some of it back because we're in a position to actually have the work completed.
All right, thank you.
Perhaps we should have had our project manager managing this work at the table.
And since you mentioned purchasing, just one last one, Rob. I've had a couple of people bring this to my notice, so I had to bring up the article because I didn't see this. But there was questions raised on the purchasing amounts of certain fittings, including this article that came in the ODT, lumsden vandalism, that council purchases these hair dryers at the cost of $1,800. Is that a reasonable amount for a hair dryer? I was asked by someone, and I said, I don't know. Is that by chance a
Hand dryer.
Hand dryer, sorry. Hand dryer.
Hand dryer.
Hand dryer. Is that a reasonable cost, I'm asked?
Look, I would have to go back and investigate that.
Yeah, that's someone who noticed it and then mentioned it, that $1,800. Yeah, thank you.
I'll have to come back to you on that.
Next, I've got Councillor Byers.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thanks, Mark. Just back to the Princess Street toilets. You said that the funds from savings in Mossburn and Dunsdale was moved to Taramia for those toilets, but I thought Taramia was funded through government funding for
a portion of it. It's a 50-50, so we still have to provide 50% of the funding.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is someone in a position to move that we receive that report? Just going to check what the
It's got quite a few recommendations as
it
well.
does.
And we've got
With the change to E, just finding my place here. So the big one in there, so E behind me, so that we're approving the unbudgeted expenditure and associated funding source, noting the change in there of $45,000 for community housing in Edendale. And F, G, and H. Someone in a position to move those? Okay. Sorry.
So can I just, is it 45 or is it 46?
45, isn't it?
It's Edendale on para 34 says 46, not 45.
For you, Your Worship, so the original report mentioned 46 divided by 2 would have given 23, or was that, that's incorrect as well? Yes, no, it's not. 23,175 times 2 is the 46 that I was referring to in the report. And so obviously I didn't have time to change that now, and I'm asking you now, sorry, to make it 23,175 for the one and 45 for the other.
45.
That is.
Got you. Okay, right. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Byers, were you moving or?
No, I just got one question. Just for clarification on number 46, Joni.
Paragraph 46?
Paragraph 46, page 60. It's around the Can you just clarify for me the quantified limits? What's that? Those 3 things: debt affordability benchmark, balanced budget benchmark, debt servicing benchmark. What does that mean?
It might come up.
Thought I was getting away scot-free. So these are the benchmarks that we have to comply with on an annual basis as part of the financial reporting and prudence. So those quantified limits are the ones that are set in the legislation that we have to comply with. That 175 equally is the same benchmark that we've got. Actually, we have to set that one, we have to set that one ourselves. That benchmark is in line with what we have with LGFA, our funding agency, and that's 175% of our revenue. So it's debt as a percentage of our revenue. Balanced budget is assets over liabilities. Yep, and debt servicing is our interest over income over expenses for balanced budget. Right, yep, sure. And debt servicing is our interest that we're paying over the amount of interest? No, it can't be. 10%, so it's just our interest over our revenue, I'd say. Yep.
Thanks, Anne. What was the second balanced budget?
It's income over expenses. That's that balanced budget where you go back to zero. You want to make sure that your revenue is greater than or equal to.
So whatever is less, we effectively a shortfall there.
Yeah, that's the deficit that we've got.
Councillor, will that councillor?
And that 10%, the debt servicing benchmark, is that sort of the maximum?
That's what the indication is under the prudence financial. They say that's a good standard to have. That's what they've set us as, and we're currently at 0.74. And if you remember the discussion that we had in terms of the LTP, we were indicating that we were getting very close to that 10% at the end of the 10-year period. As at this point in time, we're very low because we don't have a lot of that debt there.
Yeah, and do you remember what the assumed interest rate was?
We're assuming 5.68% on an annual basis. On an annual basis, we haven't tried to make any adjustments over periods of time for it. We've just set a flat rate. That's what you agreed to at this point in time, and you revise that on an annual basis.
Thanks.
Thanks.
So do we have someone in a position to move? Are you happy to move that, Don?
Prefer not.
Okay. Is someone else in a position to move? Councillor Menzies, seconded by Councillor Duffy. Noting the change that we've got me up there. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Carried. Thank you, everybody. It'll be a good time now to break for lunch.
Get agreed, Tom.
Welcome back, everybody. We'll reconvene our meeting at lunch now at item 7.5. I'll navigate to the right page, which is the Southland Trails Trust grant and budget expenditure request. This is on page 71 of your agenda, and I've got Stella and Anne at the table. Welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good afternoon, everyone. I would like to take the report as being read, but also would like to chat about some background that Councillor Greenie has been able to give to me as well. So the purpose of the report is for Council to consider whether or not to approve an unbudgeted expenditure to the Southland Trails Trust to help contribute to their resource consent. And in July last year, the Mararoa Waimea Ward councillors received a request from the Southland Trails Trust to help with their resource consent, which had ended up being a long and onerous and complex process. And this consent is actually for the leg between the Te Anau and Te Anau Downs trails. So the increase in the cost was because it ended up being a notified consent, and there were 2 community objections, and it had to go to an environmental court. And in preparation for the hearing, the Trust incurred legal costs and had to prepare scientific reports around geotech reports, wildlife assessments, and ecological reports. So the Independent Commissioner did find in favour of the consent and granted it. And both the ward councillors, Sarah, Tom and Matt, who were approached, and the Southland Community Board are in support of a contribution to the Southland Trails Trust from this Mararoa Waimea reserve. You'll see an attached letter of support from the Community Board. and a lot of reference to the amazing job that the Trails is doing and the incredible benefits that is coming from the Trails Trust mahi, and also an impact evaluation report that they've had independently done. In the report, you'll see note 19, the ward reserves are a residual fund that was collected prior to the last representation review when the ward rates were still collected. So the previous successful applicant to this reserve was actually for $26,000, and that was for a project for 16 flag tracks that were installed across Athol, Garston, Mosman and Lumsden. So the ward councillors and the community board sort of deemed it fair that a balance would go to the Fiordland area, considering the incredible benefit that the wider community are getting from the Fiordlands Trails Trust. Did you want to add anything, Anne?
No. No, thank you for that. And I think, yeah, when we look at the different reports we've had today with our own around the mountain cycle trail, and this one's sort of been running at the same time, solely for voluntarily done, and they've done some really good work. Were there any comments you wanted to make, Councillor Graney, Councillor O'Brien or Councillor Wilson, in terms of it? I might go to Councillor O'Brien first, so Councillor Graney can finish it later.
I suppose that I'll keep it short and sweet through your worship. I mean, yeah, when you look at something like this and you look at the amount of money that the trust has spent versus the overall relative benefit from a financial perspective, not only to the region, to the localised area, but to the region as a whole, I'm comfortable that it's a good investment. And if we don't continue to support it based on the financial benefit that we've had, along with everything else with regards to the report, it's a long-term investment. It's not going away. And also, as Rob alluded to earlier, the correlation between a question around what is the Around the Mountains Trail, what benefit does that have in association with this? Well, there is benefit. They're both interlinked. A lot of service providers use both, and there's benefit all round. So yeah, I mean, purely from an investment perspective versus what's coming through, I'm happy.
Thanks, Councillor Graney, is there anything?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I think the key thing with this is that the resource management application process does allow individuals that just have an objection to something to be able to make an entity like this incur a massive amount of cost. Essentially, this was, I think there were, from memory, there were about 78 submissions in favour and 2 against, and that automatically sent the application to the Environment. Subsequently, the Trust has also incurred a lot of additional costs just by the ongoing stirring, probably is one way of putting it, of these 2 individuals who, just didn't particularly want to see a trail. And unfortunately, you get these things happen. The other thing is that the Trails Trust, outside of that consent process, is only made up of volunteers. There are no paid employees in this entity. It's all been done on volunteer hours, and apart from these issues with the consents, every single dollar that they fundraise goes into building trails, to the actual building process. And so, it's, they feel as an entity not let down, but I can't think of any other words to use right now, but let down when they can't actually use the money that they've fundraised to actually go directly to building the trail, because essentially that's what they believe, that anybody that wants to make a financial contribution to the trail, that wants to see their money in, in gravel and actual action and building, as opposed to having to combat the significant costs of going to the environment.
Councillor Wilson?
Thanks, Rob. Apologies, I was waiting in the waiting room to be able to get back online and didn't actually catch the report, but I've been pretty familiar with this conversation from the initial contact made to all the Mataroa Waimea ward councillors from David. I was pretty astounded by the cost of the resource consent on a community trust doing such awesome, cool stuff in their community. I think the Fiordland Trails Trust is a real example of how community-led projects can be managed, but also an example of what they're up against. And yeah, to kind of resonate with what Sarah's saying, just some of those concerns around how the consent process can potentially inflate into something that's not manageable. We have to do it as a council, and anything to do with resource consent, and the consent costs are going up, but there's a level that we can absorb as a big organisation, but a small volunteer-led trust, which are often the most active groups in the community, they can't afford to be up against those same costs. So I support fulfilling that funding shortfall, I guess, from the Mataroa Waimea ward as suggested. But I think some real lessons need to be learned on how, in the future, we can support as a whole region with the cycle strategy, potential looking into the trails umbrella entities, and how someone like Great South could potentially help resource some of the locally led projects. I think of the Waikaia Trails Trust as an upcoming example. They're in the early stages of what they're going through, but some really expert support to help community groups get through the red tape to get good shit done is what I'd like to see, and I support everything that the Trails Trust is doing at the moment in Te Anau, and hope that we can learn more from your experience and help you future-proof all succession plans as well to continue what you're doing. Cheers.
Thanks, man. Councillor Menzies.
Thank you. I would just like to support what has been said, and would advocate for councillors at some stage having a workshop on the cycling assessment report and how we can work as a council to support that, and that will be publicly available to anybody who wants to come in on that workshop as well. Pretty good to do that in the near future and take advantage of the work that's been done around that Great South report.
Any other questions? There being none, I'm just having a look at the motions here, and I'm going to look at suggesting that we add a couple. The first one that I was going to look at is similar to the earlier one, that we acknowledge and thank the Trust for their great ongoing work for what they've done. I think it's important that we recognise, based on the sentiment that's already come around the table, formally recognise that. And the other one is just for what Councillor Menzies has just suggested, if we actually pass the motion that we have that workshop to get it on the record. So, a new E, that we acknowledge and thank the Trust for their ongoing work, and an F, that we have a workshop on the cycling assessment within the next couple of months. So if we say prior to the end of August, is that it? So someone in a position to move A through to F? Councillor Menzies, seconded by Councillor Graney. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anyone against? Right, our final item on the agenda is the schedule of meetings from January to the end of the year. Right, or we're going to take the report as read.
Take the report as read.
Any questions?
Move
There
it.
being none, I will look at our recommendation there, A through to D, and I'm not going to go through each and every one of the meetings for the rest of the triennium. Is someone in a position to move? Councillor Radenclaw, seconded by Councillor Menzies.
Wow.
There appears to be no further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? That is carried. Thank you very much. And on that note, I will declare the meeting closed.
Our time's expired.
And we're now moving on to a workshop on initiatives guiding principles, which will continue to be live streamed. And I believe Kath is going to come back to the table. Opportune time to have the workshop, given the level of discussion that we had earlier on today.
Yeah, I'll just wait for Fiona to get my presentation. Hello. So yeah, I'd just like to take the opportunity just to have a little bit of a review of the guidelines and criteria for the fund. It's it's been brought up in a couple of comments in previous funding rounds and things that it would be good to do this. So just a quick overview. So prior to this fund being set up, we had the Community Initiatives Fund, where all of the funding applications came to the council table from all over the district. There was just the one fund, and we used to get about 60 to 80 applications every round. And then in July 2019, that fund was disestablished and the District Initiatives Fund was set up, along with all the community partnership funds that all the community boards have their own little pot of money to dish out. And so in the last LTP, there was a change made to funding that we gave out to lots of organisations around the district. So several organisations were asked to apply to the District Initiatives Fund rather than just getting a grant each year. And some of the organisations were moved to more of a sort of service provider contract, sort of split into two groups. So the organisations that we asked to apply to this fund are listed there. So several of those, you'll recognise the names. We get applications from them most years. I know Citizens Advice, Southland, Loss and Grief, and Southern REAP, we've had 3 applications from them. And Life Education, we've had 2 from them. So Citizens Advice, Southland, Loss and Grief and Life Education, they all apply for operational, or have, that's what their applications have been so far, have been for their operational funding. Southern REAP tend to put theirs towards specific programs that they do in the community. St John's and Gore Counselling, we haven't received any applications from them to date. So just an overview of the types of grants that we have given out since the fund has been active. So you can see there's a pretty even split there between operational costs and ones that I've put into community wellbeing. So those are parent-to-parent outreach program, Northern Southland Resource Centre Charitable Trust, they do a lot of community programs, that type of thing fits into the community wellbeing. So there was a spreadsheet that you were seeing gone out on the hub that had them all listed in their different activities. So that operational portion, about 80% of that is those groups that we asked to apply to this fund rather than just getting a grant from us every year. Others are just random ones that have requested assistance with operational funds. So this is the current purpose that's listed on the guiding document for the fund. I won't read it all out, but it's, as you can see, it's pretty broad. The things that it specifically includes: facilities and amenities, sport and recreational, community programs, activities or events. And this is the current criteria that we list on the application form and also on our guiding document. So again, it's pretty broad. So I have put in a possible update to include things like operational funding that we're now supporting regularly from those organisations that we asked to apply and also other ones that come through. So yeah, that's just a potential update there. And again, with the criteria, the bit in blue is the potential update. And then just lastly, does the name of the fund accurately reflect what we're actually giving out the funding for? And yeah, possible alternative names. I just chucked a few up there. Yeah, so I guess I just open it up for discussion and your thoughts on whether you think that this criteria and purpose accurately suit the fund. Do you want to change the name? Do you want to add anything in?
Councillor Hicks.
Thank you. I quite like the current name, the Initiatives Fund. It sort of covers a lot of, it's not the one of the years like partnership. Well, a lot of these people are quite independent of us other than a bit of financial support. So initiatives doesn't say that it's any one particular thing. So or one particular aspect of, I think, covers the options of what we're willing to fund. Just wondering if the list organisations have been asked to apply there. If we take, do we actually? That's just for this. It does for this report. The purposes of this report. It doesn't. The fact that they're there doesn't mean that they are. They're the only ones that can apply, doing that sort of work can apply. It's for anybody.
No, it's just the ones that we used to just give money to every year. Yeah.
Counselling won't be applying anytime soon, I can't imagine. So like it's that. But who knows in the future if funding changed again, that they might be back again. But hopefully not. So, I like the name of the list.
Do you find there's a bit of confusion with people applying still between what's for the community partnership fund and what's for this? Like, do we need to get more clarification around?
Yeah, and I think that's probably just something that we need to work on what's on the website, because we do have, not often, but I've noticed in the last round we did have several organisations that were applying to both, and I had to go back to them and say, actually, it's really designed to be either you go to your local community board or you're taking a more regional approach. So I think that that's probably more at a website level we can remedy that, and also we're readjusting the community partnership fund forms at the moment just to include about the community board plans and how they connect to that, and so that'll have a page on it that will kind of help that situation too, I think.
Thank you. I may have commented on this last time with the name District Initiatives, because in fact some of these applications are on an ongoing basis as opposed to being an initiative, being new. And it's just how that's looked at from those who have the potential to apply. So I suppose if those ones who are continuing to apply, they know that. And so it does send the message to others that this is a fund you can access if you're setting up something and wanting to look to see if they get some support with their ongoing funding. But it does seem a lot of it is repeat applications.
Through your worship, probably following on from what Julie and Christine are talking about as well, we've got organisations asked to apply to the district fund. Is there any funding allocation through the DIF for music, arts and culture, or is it more of a community?
So there is the Creative Communities Fund, but those ones, they tend to go that way if they're applying for those sorts of things. I mean, definitely wouldn't exclude that if it was something that was of benefit to our wider region, and definitely wouldn't be excluded, but they do tend to
go that way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, just on that word initiatives, I think they were all initiatives originally, and perhaps having the word there encourages them to use initiative and how they morph their.
Take it.
So yeah, so they keep abreast of requirements and needs, as it were. So I'm pleased to hear that with the community, even though it's not what we're really talking about, with the community partnership form now, Gordon won't have to contact people to send in the linkage to the community board
it will be part of the form they need to tick.
I think that's something we lost a bit of credibility over, with people had to go back and do that. Yeah.
That's right, cool.
Mine is more about clarity around this. The two community board areas here must be of benefit to two community board areas or district as a whole. And I've sort of never thought of RET because it's one, never applying to anything in amongst this. But now that that's more clear, some of those projects that have happened in RET, we could have applied to that because of the John Street area in Winton, their parks that are different use. Would that make
it depends on the application, and sometimes it also depends on whether it's better to go to that local fund. That might be things, if that community board has a decent pot of money to allocate, sometimes it's better to go there. Sometimes there's not a really clear benefit to at least two community board areas, and so it's sort of better to direct it locally. Others, it might come from Lumsden, but probably lots of outlying areas that might benefit from it. I don't know if that explains that. You kind of look at each application, and there have been some that might come here that I've directed to the local funds, because I can just see that it's a better fit there, or vice versa.
Can you do both?
No, so it's designed so that you either apply here or you go to the local pot.
Councillor Duffy?
I think that two community board areas aspect of it perhaps disadvantages Waihopai-Toitoi ward because it's a large ward with one community board. From possibly some aspects of Curio Bay where there's a district-wide, visitor aspect to it, it would be difficult for us to qualify for that one.
So
I would just endorse that too in relation to Rakiura, because if we link in with anything, we would be linking into Invercargill City, not the rest of Southland. Although the rest of Southland would be definitely invited, but.
So if we remove that criteria, how do you differentiate it from and who makes that call as well? It becomes a bit of a challenge.
We just say a wider district benefit or something.
Because there's a cap on the community partnership of $5,000. Whether what's the cap? Is there a cap? There's no cap. See, there's no cap on this one.
But community partnership as well, it's not normally as big as this because they're a lot smaller for each of the boards, so there's not that same pool of.
Exactly. So you can only, if you can't have the benefit, like for a district benefit, there might be some really good initiatives, particularly for some of these capital projects. But I think it's more challenging for some community boards to actually demonstrate the district-wide benefit.
Great.
Thank you, Rob. Just I wonder if you could fill in some blanks in history for me. You mentioned that these 2-3 organizations were, as it is, coming to the council for money, and this was set up. So before 2019, was there another fund to which these organizations were?
No, there was just part of the long-term plan grants. They would just get given an amount of money every year, and it was part of the long-term plan.
Right. And has the total amount that we were given in terms of a long-term plan, has that changed? This was created
So the ones that have changed to more of a contract for service, they still receive the same amount that they were given. And then these ones were just asked to apply here. So whatever they were given,
that continued, rolled over like that.
It just got absorbed into it. Like it didn't come to this fund.
Right.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a comment, because I couldn't comment before, on the Citizens Advice Bureau, and someone made the comment that they possibly just didn't get around to applying. Certainly not the case. They didn't actually need to apply because they had sufficient funding, but there's been some changes have happened, so they're looking to, that's why they're back here now. So it's on a needs basis. It wasn't on a, just because they overlooked applying Plain Street. And also the thing on the I think we need more criteria around that wider district benefit, because probably looking back through, the only ones that I can see that actually qualify for 2 community boards are the Northern Southland Community Resource Centre Charitable Trust, and that's because they have their position and they're 2 small boards, whereas Wyndham was running that, and we wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be able to apply, even though they might invite people from core into the area. So it's I think that raising it up a little bit higher, because there would be no reason why that charitable trust could not apply to the 2 community board funds to get the money.
Because it covers 3, effectively.
Or 3 community board funds to get the money that they need, whereas it needs to be, I feel like it needs to be a bit of a broader sort of a benefit.
So you mean take out the 2 community boards and just have a demonstrating a wider Southland benefit?
Yeah.
So would that be at your discretion then, when the application comes for you, to suggest that they should go to community board instead?
I think if it was obvious that it was really localised, I would direct them to the local fund, but otherwise it would come here, and that would be for you guys to decide.
Sometimes the application does have details, like there was something applied to our board at the Wallace Academy, and they were able to clearly demonstrate that there's students from here who go down to this so-and-so area, and that extends. So usually even a footnote with something about that.
And you would still have the, on the application form, you would still have, how does this?
The wider. So if you ask them to spell it out, I think if people put some thought into it, it can't be.
So at the moment it says, please explain how your project will benefit at least 2 community areas. So you could just change that wording to.
Yeah, because when you look at some of these applications, particularly like the Winton Men's Friendship Club, that would then mean that places like Rakiora, if there was an event that attracted people across to the island, then they would be able to apply for this fund.
Yeah, I think that one from memory, that was their choir going and singing at various places around. So I mean, they benefit. There's that other benefit. So that one was travelling. Their travelling choir out will be.
But then the other event, there's also the other one was the River Turn.
Oh yeah,
Paul. Again, that's people going in potentially that aren't necessarily residing there, but again, that would then be able to picked up by the likes of Rakiora and Fiordland as well. So I think there's some benefit in changing the wording.
Riverton Pool, I thought, was a bit of a stretch.
But having it, just going back, that having it so that it's, just the fact that it's 2 community boards they'd have to put some more work into how it benefits the wider community, and I think that would be good for any project that we're looking at doing. So,
I think there's a reason probably previously as to why it's got to advantaging more than one district. And essentially we're still saying the same thing, whether we put the wider district or not, because it's just saying it has a greater benefit overall. So I'm not sure if we're just playing with wording or making it easier for people to see, oh, this might apply, because it is at a different level. And we want to see, I think we're agreed that we want to see it benefiting more than one board area. The difference it would make would be for Rakiora, we were saying it could be something within the Rakiora that means other people will be attending. But I get the sense we're still saying it's got to advantage more than just the one one board, because you apply for your local funds, because we don't want to make it any harder for you to make that judgment, because there's still got to be a criteria around that essentially.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole differentiation between the Community Partnership Fund and the District Initiatives Fund, is that to be able to show that any application here would.
And if they don't meet the criteria, then they're referred back to the local one.
It needs thinking at that stage, though, also that our community one has very little money. You know.
Yes, I mean, Stewart Island's only got about $4,500 to give out.
Yeah. For total allocation.
But
thinking about the size of those board areas as well, because
we're rating from the board, from the area for that. So it's
I've just got
young people. Sorry,
I've got Matt with his hand up there as well. You there, Matt?
Yeah, cheers. Sorry, my camera's not working now. There's one thing I want to highlight in the conversation around the if it crossed 2 community boards, then it's eligible. There's geographical constructs around this. So if you're outside the district, you're, say, Citizens Advice Bureau based in Invercargill, you're going to be effective across 2 community boards in the Southland district. If you're in, say, a Citizens Advice Bureau in Gore district, you're potentially going to also, be valuable to the Waihopai Toitoi board as well as the Ardlasa board. If you're in the Queenstown Lakes District Council, geographically, you're only going to be of value to the Northern Community Board. But that doesn't disregard the importance of what an initiative coming out of that Northern TA could, an example of this morning's conversation around the Otago Museum outside the districts in Otago, but coming into Southland District to implement that initiative, we can't, we lose the ability to encourage our friends in the north to be able to implement initiatives into our district, which there's quite a lot of initiatives going up there, but they'll never be eligible to come down through Kingston into Garston, into Athol, through to Lumsden, because they'll never be able to, meet that coming further into the district than that. It makes it a way larger hoop for an initiative based up there to be eligible for this, and that's just purely geographic.
Can you just clarify, Matt? I don't know if I'm the only one that's confused by it. So why do you think they wouldn't be eligible? Because they're outside?
Well,
just one.
Well, because there's, it's that community of interest thing, just like in the representation review. It's what's close to you. So if there's an initiative based out of Invercargill, geographically, the proximity is quite close to multiple community boards, geographically speaking. Same if it was based in Gore, same even if it was based in, probably not so much Central Otago, Clutha or anything, but if it's an initiative from the Queenstown Lakes District Council, which is quite a large centre, so there's a lot of, community groups that can be extending, and it is part of a community trust south area, so they're eligible for funding through that. But if they wanted to reach their initiative down, and it's going to be for the well-being of the people of Northern Southland, they wouldn't be eligible for this unless they're prepared to venture geographically a lot further into the district.
Could potentially cross over into Ardlassa.
Potentially, yeah.
And
So, yeah.
Fiordland.
It was a really good initiative advertised, and why would they not be advertising into a more?
And yeah, I mean, again, this is where it comes down to, is that you look at the application, and you know they're all different. So,
But they would still be eligible to apply for the community board partnership fund if they were just reaching into that one community board area. Likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess it's that. I'm not trying to pick apart the policy. I'm just pointing out that there's geographical limitations to our partnerships with our neighbouring council in the north that we need to always consider. And you know, there's massive growth in the northern Southland area, but Invercargill's a long way to Garston.
Yep, I agree.
I think that kind of links into our discussion early this morning. That's really important for those organisations from Invercargill or elsewhere to demonstrate and provide data that shows where the benefit is and some follow-up data that shows that they're making a difference. And we're not always getting that coming through. So whether that means a change in the question or not, you're having conversations, so it may be easier just to ask for that evidence to come through. Particularly as I think that we're going to get more and more applications, given the difficulty for organisations to access the funding anywhere else, because NGOs won't be getting the same level of support as they have in the past from federal government, just like us.
It'll be difficult to actually do this exercise, but like in terms of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs, where they've worked out that it's a $5.30 social return for every dollar invested, it'd be quite cool to be able to get in sort of an analysis of some of the return of some of these projects and what Councillor Duffy was saying earlier on, and some of the value that we get out of, because effectively it is an investment in a lot of these things, and it does pull through quite a big return for some of our communities. Anyone else got anything they want to? Have you got enough kind of direction there?
So, well, what I'm hearing is the name's fine. We don't need to change the name. And I guess just going back to the criteria and the purpose. I mean, what do you think of those adjustments that I made, just to reflect that we are willing to support operational costs and organisations that are providing those health and wellbeing services to our community? Are you happy to update that?
Do we actually need to put that in there? Because if we,
I would support that, because I think that, back to Christine's point, we are seeing a lot of funding cuts across a whole range of different things, and I think given as council we're also mandated to look at wellbeing, community wellbeing. I think it's actually probably one of the few places where we pick that up and overtly say that we would be supporting something that's wellbeing related.
so then would the piece above be within the Southland District that are at a scale, or what words would we use there, that benefits, provides benefits to the district, to the wider district, or the district as a
So
whole?
do we want to
District as a
keep
whole.
the 2 community board areas, or do we want to take that out and just?
We should take it out.
I think we should take it out.
Or make it 2 community board areas plus Waihopai Toi Toi.
Stewart Island.
Let's Stewart Island.
Should we vote on that?
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, this is why we bring the applications to this table, and we have the discussions about the application, because you are looking at those applications and deciding how does this benefit our region and do we want to support it. So
For me, it needs to have a broader district, like be available across the district. as like
Wider.
citizens' advice, for example, but just defining it as 2 community boards seems like it then locks you into that. And so having something that gives it a bit more scale across would be.
I guess just to be conscious of in that too is also the timing of some of these applications. If we decline them in March because they're supposed to be for a community board one, and then the community board's next doing that in September or October, they may actually miss out on the opportunity if the project's starting in July or something. So make sure we've got the clarity there at the start so they don't miss an opportunity.
I just wonder on that, is there a benefit in staggering it? So these are one time and the other ones are later or something? Is that a
And the
benefit?
thing is, the community boards have decided their own. Yeah, I think it probably fit. Yeah, it's probably.
And in relation to Recura, we've slotted other fundings around these 2 dates. So there isn't a clash.
Yeah, the question I was really wanting to ask was just to do with non-council owned facilities and amenities, and it's probably more applies to the community partnership than this, but there's a lot of council owned facilities, and I mean the Wyndham Museum's one of them, and some halls, etc., where they're owned by council, but they're totally funded by the local community and ran by the local community volunteers. And I just wonder if that's being a wee bit of a disadvantage to those groups.
I think with some of those ones, they can still apply for things that aren't directly related to that facility. So if it was like, I think maybe the Royal Bush Hall, or maybe they may have done some events or some programs there, and they got funded for that, but not. And I think they put some stuff in the playground or something like that wasn't attached to that hall, so it was separate. So they got funding for that, but anything that was to do with the actual facility itself, or if it was attached to it, they wouldn't be funded. So there's a little bit of a loophole there.
Yeah. As long as it's known.
Cutting.
Just in terms
of, if you've got money and you can't apply, but you've got a project, then you use the money you've got to do something else, and then you apply to get this money.
Just in terms of, sorry, Rob, through you. Just in terms of interpretation, and I'm just commenting, we don't want to make a rod for Kath's back here in terms of how we interpret or how the people can interpret this. So I'm just wondering, first of all, do you ever get applications from a single community board? And if so, because that doesn't meet the criteria, can we mitigate that by saying not less than 1 community board?
An application from the actual community board.
So, and implementation
area or board itself?
the district as a whole, or are a benefit to at least 2 community boards. So, can you change the wording so that you don't open yourself up for, unless I'm completely misinterpreting this, which is highly possible. I'm reading that in a way to say that can 1 community board apply for funding?
No. So that's relating to community groups who are applying. Their project must show benefit to at least 2 community areas.
Okay.
Because the 2 community board areas are the minimum.
Yeah.
So, and the other is as a whole. So
well, I would probably like to see that just the wider district, so that you know, because then it does.
Wider Southland district.
Southland district.
It takes out the same thing.
Yeah.
So if it takes it out, it's not essentially making any difference, but it doesn't appear to limit it as much as the second part of that sentence does.
And I can generally tell by reading the application whether stretching to apply to this fund and whether they should go to a local fund, and where it's where it's it might be leaning more this way, but not right down this end. That's where it comes here, and you guys discuss it and decide. Yeah,
because we're going to apply that. We're going to be asking, well, how does it benefit the wider area? So,
okay, so I'll reword that bit. But there, and it'll go on the application form as well.
Is there the opportunity to put some type of provision of or what's practicably, appropriate. Because I mean, again, just to use that north versus south precedent of, say, the Citizens Advice Bureau. If you're the Citizens Advice Bureau in Invercargill, you're naturally going to meet 2 community boards. The Citizens Advice Bureau in Queenstown, that would serve more practically anyone north of, say, Lumsden, but that's only 1 community board. So same service, same ratepayers in Southland, but it's not practicable that one would be eligible and one's not. So having a provision of, ideally spanning 2 community boards or whatever is practicable. Like, there needs to be some functionality for still equal eligibility that only due to geographic circumstances does it not meet that 2 board criteria.
That's why if you drop it and you just have the wider district, you actually,
the Southland district.
there's some element of interpretation there that it's not the whole district, but it is
Cool.
wide.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right, so yeah, I can make those changes and I can bring them back to council to be approved in the future.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's it. Excellent.
It's going to win away. I'm going to have 2 wide.
So just in terms of, it might be quite good even for new councillors to explain your role in terms of helping out organisations fundraising that fall outside of this, in terms, because there's a whole lot of other funding available as well. So do you guide people when they come to you?
So I work in the Wellington, Katimu, Ardlasa and northern areas, and a little bit Stewart Island as well, just with the community partnership funds. So I manage those funds, and then Gordon looks after all the rest of them. And so Northern also has the Northern Southland Development Fund, and there's the Ohio Railway Fund as well, which I look after. So there's a couple of other. It's the sport one. There's also the John Benj one that Gordon looks after. So we just sort of take the funds in our area and look after them.
Because in terms of the lots of community trust and lotteries and all those sort of other ones, is there an appropriate sort of source of advice for people to? Because I'm just thinking back to when Venture Southland was there and there's a community development.
I don't concentrate solely on that. It's also working with community groups in those areas and assisting them for funding advice and directing them to those organisations for their projects and helping them put together a funding plan or a budget and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Make a comment. Thank you, Rob. Keith, Rob flicked me an email about maybe 2 weeks ago around Grants Guru, which is a grants provider in Australia, and it's rolled out to 50% of the councils. Now, I've had an online meeting with Phil and connected into Great South and talking to groups that connected with Hiku, and I need to have a chat to you about it before we do something here. And it's grant finder. A lot of councils have excitingly step in art and also have the application that's available. There is an investment, but it wasn't significant. But
I mean, I have noticed over the last few rounds of funding that, we've got organisations coming that have never been approached, so they're finding us somehow. And obviously there's just that desperate need for any kind of assistance.
I mean, as an organisation, just scour the web for funding now, don't you? That's what I do.
Well, thank you for that.
All right, thank you.
I'll close the day off for the closing karakia. Kia tono, kia rino, kia whakapapa, whanamu, kia moana, Agurahi, mā tātou i te rangi nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou i, a tātou katoa, hui ei, toi ki ei.
Yay.
May peace be widespread, may the sea be like greenstone, a pathway for us all this day. Let us show respect for each other, for one another, bind us all together. Thank you, everybody. It was a great day.
And on the community one, which I presume the other one's the same, it's only got 8 boxes for the GST number.
Does it?
Going to see
Change that while we do everything